Chapter 1: Rust and Rain. The sky wept rust. Not always, but often enough that the ochre streaks staining every surface felt less like temporary afflictions and more like the planet's true skin. Klynch tasted the metallic tang on the wind, grit grinding between his teeth despite the grimy cowl pulled low over his face. He hunkered lower behind a twisted bulkhead, salvaged from some forgotten freighter, the rhythmic asterisk clang, clang, clang asterisk of Scoria's water purification rig echoing across the trash dunes like a tyrant's heartbeat. Distance muted it, but nothing truly silenced it. Not here. Not on Xylos, the dumping ground of a dozen systems, the place stars forgot, the Junkyard Planet. Survival here wasn't living. It was a series of negotiated failures. Each breath was borrowed from toxic air, each meal scavenged from the verge of putrescence, each night's shelter a temporary truce with gravity and decay. Klynch knew this truce better than most. His left arm, or rather the space where it used to be below the elbow, was a constant reminder. Now, a crude hydraulic claw, grafted onto the stump with pain and scavenged servo motors, served him. It whirred softly as he adjusted his grip on the thermal lance, its tip still glowing faintly from carving through the bulkhead's rusted welds. The prize today was minimal, a cluster of intact power conduits, maybe holding enough residual charge to trade for a half ration of nutrient paste or a few liters of semi-potable water. Every scrap mattered. Every jewel was life. He coiled the conduits, the thick, greasy insulation resisting, and stuffed them into his worn canvas pack. The claw, surprisingly nimble for its bulk, helped secure the load. A high-pitched yelp broke the monotony of the wind and the distant rig. Klynch froze, his good hand instinctively going to the heavy wrench holstered on his thigh. Trouble had 1,000 voices on Xylos, none of them pleasant. He peered cautiously around the edge of the bulkhead. Two figures scrambled down a nearby slope of compacted refuse, one human-sized, the other much smaller, canine-like but with mismatched metallic limbs glinting even in the dim, filtered light. Jex and Bolt, of course. The kid treated the entire junkyard like a personal playground, seemingly oblivious to the constant grinding threat of it all. Jex, maybe 15 cycles old, skinny, and perpetually dirt-smeared, waved frantically when they spotted Klynch. Bolt, the cybercanid, barked again, a weirdly synthesized sound, its thermal eye glowing a steady blue. "Klynch, Klynch, you gotta see this." Jex skidded to a halt a few meters away, kicking up clouds of red dust. Bolt sniffed the air around Klynch, then nudged his leg with a cold metal snout. Klynch straightened, keeping his voice low and rough. "See what, kid? Shimmer rats staging a parade. Keep your voice down. Scoria's patrols sweep this sector." Jex bounced on the balls of their feet, vibrating with excitement. Nah, better. Bolt tracked a power surge way bigger than usual, led us over the ridge of shattered hulls. Found. Well, you gotta see. Klynch grunted. Curiosity was a luxury often fatal. But Jex, despite their recklessness, had sharp eyes, and Bolt's senses were often more reliable than any scavenged scanner. A major power surge could mean anything: a collapsing structure revealing valuable tech, a dormant system kicking back online, or, just as likely, a trap set by less scrupulous scavengers. Still, the conduits wouldn't fetch much. Maybe this was worth the risk. "Where?" he asked, shouldering his pack. "This way, follow Bolt." Jex was already scrambling back up the slope, Bolt loping ahead, its mechanical legs clicking and whirring. Klynch hesitated for only a moment, scanning the oppressive horizon. Towers of junk pierced the perpetually overcast sky like broken teeth. The air tasted of decay and ozone. Far off, towards the pulsing clang of the water rig, fortified structures marked Scoria's territory, the domain of the Junkyard Queen, who controlled the flow of water and therefore the flow of life and death for most scavengers in this quadrant. Straying too far, finding something too valuable without cutting her in. That was a death sentence. But the lure of a real score, something more than just conduits and scrap, was a powerful opiate in this desolate place. He adjusted the hydraulic claw, feeling the familiar ache in his stump, and started climbing, the loose scree of crushed plastic and rusted metal shifting under his heavy boots. Bolt led them through a maze of collapsing gantries and mountains of discarded consumer goods, mountains that occasionally shifted with unsettling groans. The wind whistled through skeletal remains of starship engines, carrying whispers that might have been static, or might have been something else entirely. They crested the ridge of shattered hulls, a jagged spine of enormous metal fragments half buried in the detritus. Below them lay a crater, not geological, but formed by the impact of something massive long ago. At the crater's center, nestled amongst the twisted metal like a cancerous pearl, was a small geodesic dome, surprisingly intact, though its transparent panels were opaque with grime and age. It looked like a discarded observation post, or perhaps a lifeboat from some ancient crash. Bolt whined softly, sniffing at the crater's edge. Jex pointed. Down there, the surge came from inside, felt weird. Klynch frowned. Intact structures were rare. Usually they were either stripped bare within cycles or claimed by territorial creatures or paranoid hermits. This dome felt different, older, undisturbed. He scanned the area again. No tracks leading in or out save for the fresh ones left by Jex and Bolt. No obvious signs of habitation. Just the silence, thick and heavy. "All right," Klynch said, his voice tight. "Stay sharp. Bolt, you sense anything active, biological?" Bolt tilted its head, emitting a low processing hum. Its thermal eye flickered. Negative biologicals detected within 50 meters. Low-level energy signature within structure. Unidentified type. Unidentified, that wasn't reassuring. Klynch gripped his thermal lance tighter. "Okay, Jex, you stay up here, keep watch. Signal if you see anything, Scoria's patrols, or, otherwise, Bolt with me." Jex nodded, pulling out a battered set of electro-binoculars. "Got it. Don't get yourself spaced, Klynch." Klynch didn't reply, already making his way down the treacherous slope into the crater. The air grew stiller, heavier, the pervasive smell of rust somehow cleaner here, less mingled with organic rot. Bolt padded silently beside him, its head low, sensors constantly scanning. The dome loomed larger, its surface surprisingly smooth beneath the layers of grime. A single, sealed hatch faced them, bearing no markings Klynch recognized, just abstract geometric patterns etched into the dull metal. He ran his good hand over the surface near the hatch. Cold, dead. But Bolt insisted there was power inside. He examined the seam of the hatch. No obvious locking mechanism, no keypad, no handle. Just smooth, seamless metal. Odd, he muttered. He pressed his palm flat against it. Nothing. He tried the claw, tapping gently. The metal rang with a dull thud. Bolt nudged the hatch with its snout, then whined again, stepping back. It looked hesitant. Klynch had never seen the cybercanid act hesitant before. He decided to try the thermal lance, set on low, just enough to maybe find a seam or a hidden release. He brought the glowing tip close to the edge of the hatch. The moment the heat touched the metal, a section of the geometric pattern on the door glowed with a soft, internal blue light. A low hum resonated through the ground, and with a hiss of displaced air, the circular hatch irised open, revealing darkness within. The air that puffed out wasn't stale or toxic. It was strangely neutral, cool, almost sterile. Klynch hesitated. Every instinct screamed trap. This was too easy, too clean for Xylos, but the potential prize. He activated the lamp mounted on his shoulder rig. The beam cut into the darkness, revealing a small, cramped interior. It looked like a control room or cockpit. A single chair faced a bank of dark screens. Dust motes danced in the light beam. And there, sitting on a low pedestal in the center of the small space, was an object. It was small, no bigger than his fist, shaped like a complex knot of metallic tendrils, smooth and cool-looking. It pulsed with a faint, internal golden light, the source of the energy Bolt had detected. It didn't look like any tech Klynch had ever seen, not Imperial, not Federation, not even the strange biotech sometimes found in medical waste dumps. It looked alien, ancient, and inexplicably valuable. He took a hesitant step inside, Bolt whining softly at the threshold but not following. The beam of his lamp played over the object. It seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. The golden pulse within quickened slightly as he approached, like a dormant heart sensing proximity. He reached out not with his flesh hand but with the hydraulic claw. Carefully, he maneuvered the metal pincers around the object. It felt cool to the touch, even through the sensors relayed to his stump. He lifted it. It was heavier than it looked, dense and solid. As he brought it closer, the internal golden light flared, momentarily blinding him. He instinctively jerked back, the claw tightening its grip. There was a soft click sound, and a single, needle-sharp tendril extended from the artifact, brushing against the knuckle of his claw's index pincer. Nothing happened, at least nothing immediate. He examined the claw under the lamplight. No mark, no damage. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Just a defense mechanism, maybe. He turned to leave, the artifact held securely. As his lamp beam swept across the floor near the pedestal, it glinted off something else. Not metal, something crystalline. He crouched, focusing the light. It was a hand, small like a child's, perfectly formed, but it wasn't flesh or bone. It was solid, translucent amber, shot through with veins of pure, glittering gold. It lay half buried in the dust, fingers curled slightly, severed cleanly at the wrist. Klynch's blood ran cold. He stared at the golden hand, then at the artifact humming softly in his claw. The neutral air in the dome suddenly felt suffocating. This wasn't just salvage. This wasn't just power. This was something else, something dangerous. He backed out of the dome quickly, Bolt pressing close to his leg as soon as he was clear. The hatch irised shut behind him with the same soft hiss, the blue light fading from the geometric pattern, leaving it looking inert once more. "Klynch, everything okay?" Jex's voice crackled over the short-range comm unit clipped to his shoulder. Klynch looked at the artifact, then back towards the sealed dome and the memory of the golden hand within. His own hand, the flesh and blood one, tingled faintly. "Yeah, kid," he lied, his voice hoarse. "Everything's fine, found something. Let's get out of here, now." He started scrambling back up the slope, the strange, heavy object clutched tight in his mechanical fist, a sudden chilling premonition settling deep in his gut. The Junkyard Planet had just offered him something new. Not just scrap, not just survival, power. And maybe, just maybe, a curse worse than rust or rain. Chapter 2: The Gleam in the Grit. The trek back from the crater felt different. Longer. The familiar landscape of twisted metal canyons and slag-glass plains seemed subtly altered, imbued with a new layer of menace Klynch hadn't perceived before. Or perhaps it was simply the weight of the object in his claw, not just its physical density, but the psychic burden of its strangeness, the chilling image of the golden hand seared into his mind. Jex predictably was buzzing with questions. What is it? What you find? Is it tech? Weapons? Looked shiny. Bolt said the energy signature was nuts. Klynch deflected, offering curt non-answers. Just some old artifact, probably worthless decorative junk. He kept it tucked inside his pack now, wrapped in oily rags, but he could almost feel its presence, a low thrum against his back. He didn't want Jex getting any ideas. Hope was dangerous on Xylos, and false hope, the kind Klynch suspected this artifact represented, was poison. Bolt trotted beside Klynch, occasionally nudging the pack with its snout, emitting low whines. The cybercanid seemed unnerved by the artifact, its usual mechanical confidence replaced by a wary curiosity. They reached the relative safety of Klynch's current shelter, a hollowed-out section beneath the colossal, overturned engine nacelle of a generation ship that had failed millennia ago. The entrance was narrow, hidden behind sheets of corrugated plasteel, easily defensible. Inside it was cramped, smelling of stale air, lubricant, and Klynch's own unwashed existence. A single glowrod cast flickering, inadequate light over a sleeping pallet, a workbench cluttered with tools and salvaged components, and meager stacks of supplies. Home, such as it was. Jex peered inside. "You sure you don't want help identifying that thing? I know a guy, trades info down by the acid falls." "No, kid," Klynch cut him off sharply. "Some things are better left unidentified. Go on, get back to your own burrow before the acid fog rolls in, and keep quiet about the dome. Understand? Not a word." Jex looked momentarily hurt by the dismissal but nodded. "Yeah, okay, Klynch. Sure. Come on, Bolt." The kid and the dog disappeared back into the gloom, leaving Klynch alone with his unsettling prize. He secured the entrance, the scraping sound of the plasteel sheet echoing in the confined space. For a long moment he just stood there, listening to the wind howl outside, the ever-present groan of shifting junk a constant reminder of the planet's instability. Then slowly, he unslung his pack and carefully unwrapped the artifact. Placed on his workbench under the direct light of the glow rod, it seemed less menacing, though no less strange. The intricate knot of metallic tendrils gleamed softly, the internal golden light pulsing rhythmically like a slow heartbeat. It was cool to the touch through his glove. He circled it, examining it from every angle. No seams, no buttons, no interface ports. Just smooth, alien geometry. He thought again of the sharp tendril that had emerged, brushing against his claw. An instinctive defense, or an interaction. He cautiously extended the hydraulic claw again, hovering the pincers near the object. Nothing happened. He gently touched one of the smooth, looping tendrils with a metal finger. The golden pulse brightened slightly, a low hum vibrating through the claw into his stump. What was this thing? Some kind of power source, a key, a weapon? The golden hand suggested something far more bizarre: transmutation, matter conversion. Legends whispered among scavengers spoke of wonders and horrors discarded from across the galaxy, artifacts that could reshape reality, devices that devoured souls, weapons that unmade stars. Most were just junk-addled fantasies, but this felt real. His gaze fell upon a piece of scrap metal lying on the workbench, a jagged shard of rusted plasteel, utterly worthless. On impulse, driven by a desperate curiosity that overrode his caution, he picked up the artifact with his gloved hand. It felt heavier now, almost warm. He held it over the scrap shard. He focused, remembering the golden hand. He didn't know what he was doing, but he willed the artifact to act, to do asterisk something. The golden pulse within the artifact flared, becoming almost painful to look at. The low hum intensified, vibrating not just through his hand, but seemingly through the very air in the shelter. The shard of rusted plasteel beneath it began to shimmer. The rust seemed to flake away, not falling but dissolving into motes of light. The dull gray metal underneath shifted, its color warming, brightening. Within seconds, the jagged piece of worthless scrap transformed. It lay on the workbench, gleaming under the glow rod, no longer rusted plasteel but solid, unmistakable gold. It retained the exact shape of the original shard, every sharp edge, every rough break, now rendered in brilliant, untarnished precious metal. Klynch stared, his breath catching in his throat. He dropped the artifact back onto the bench as if burned. He reached out with his flesh hand, hesitated, then touched the golden shard. It felt real, solid, heavy, gold, pure, actual gold. His mind raced. The implications were staggering. On a planet where a canteen of clean water could cost a scavenger a week's worth of dangerous labor, gold was practically mythical. It was the currency of the off-worlders, the stuff of legends from the core systems. With this, he could buy passage off Xylos. He could buy a new arm, a asterisk real asterisk one. He could buy security, food, maybe even a life that didn't involve constantly staring into the jaws of death. Greed, cold and sharp, pierced through the fear. He looked around his squalid shelter at the meager supplies, the constant damp, the pervading stink of decay. This artifact wasn't a curse, it was a miracle, a ticket out. He snatched up another piece of scrap, a bent bolt, and held the artifact over it. Again, the flare of light, the intense hum. The bolt transformed, gleaming gold. He grabbed a discarded gear, a strip of wire mesh, a dented ration tin. Each one, under the artifact's influence, turned to solid gold. His heart pounded in his chest, a frantic drumbeat against the hum of the artifact. He laughed, a raw, rusty sound that echoed strangely in the confined space. He spent the next hour in a frenzy, transmuting every worthless bit of junk he could find within reach. A small pile of gleaming gold objects grew on his workbench, reflecting the glowrod's light, making the dismal shelter seem almost opulent. The initial fear was drowned by exhilaration, by the intoxicating rush of power. He finally stopped, breathing heavily, his gloved hand slightly numb from holding the artifact. The internal golden light seemed a bit dimmer now, the pulse slower. Did it have a limited charge? Did it need to recharge, drawing on that unidentified energy Bolt had detected back at the dome? He needed to be careful. Flashing this much gold around would be suicide. Scoria would hear of it within a cycle. Her enforcers, led by the hulking, cybernetically enhanced Brute Rivet, would tear the junkyard apart to find him. He needed a plan. Transmute just enough scrap to buy essentials, maybe trade for information, keep the artifact hidden. Small transactions, untraceable sources. He picked up the first shard he'd transmuted, the golden piece of plasteel. It felt warm in his ungloved hand. As he turned it over, admiring the impossible gleam, the sharp edge grazed his palm. A thin red line appeared, welling with blood. "A scrap," he muttered, sucking the small cut, just careless. He was getting giddy. He needed rest, needed to think clearly. He carefully wrapped the artifact back in its oily rags, placing it inside a locked tool chest beneath his sleeping pallet. The pile of golden objects he gathered and hid in a separate container, buried under a pile of loose junk in the corner. He sat down on the edge of his pallet, the adrenaline slowly draining away, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness and a faint, persistent tingling in his cut palm. He glanced at the palm. The bleeding had stopped, but where the cut had been there was something odd. A tiny fleck, no bigger than a grain of sand, seemed embedded in the healing skin. It glittered faintly, catching the light. Gold. He tried to pick it out with a fingernail, but it seemed fused with his flesh. A chill, colder than the junkyard night, traced its way up his spine. He remembered the sharp tendril from the artifact brushing his claw. It hadn't touched his skin then, but the graze from the transmuted gold shard. He forcefully dismissed the thought. It was nothing, a trick of the light, contamination from handling the gold. He was tired, paranoid. He'd check it again in the morning light cycle. But as he lay back on the lumpy pallet, trying to force his racing mind towards sleep, the image of the small, perfect, golden hand lying in the dust of the alien dome returned. And the faint tingling in his palm began to feel less like a healing cut and more like a cold, alien seed taking root in his flesh. The hum of the hidden artifact seemed to pulse in time with his own blood, a silent, golden promise intertwined with an unspoken, terrifying threat. The wealth of the stars was his for the taking, but the price was becoming terrifyingly unclear. Chapter 3, First Touch. Dawn on Xylos was less a sunrise and more a gradual lessening of the oppressive gloom. The omnipresent clouds shifted from charcoal to a bruised purple-gray, filtering the weak light of the distant, nameless sun. Klynch woke stiffly, the familiar aches of sleeping on a hard pallet amplified by a restless night chasing dreams of golden statues and grasping metallic hands. The first thing he did was check his palm. He held it close to the sputtering glow rod. The cut from the previous cycle was barely visible, already healing. Survival on Xylos demanded rapid mending. But the golden fleck remained. It wasn't contamination. It was embedded asterisk in asterisk his skin, a tiny, unnatural star glittering just beneath the surface. He scraped at it again with a tool hard enough to draw blood, but the fleck wouldn't budge. It felt like a part of him. A wave of nausea washed over him. He pushed it down, forcing himself into the routine of survival. Check the shelter perimeter. Monitor the comm channels for Scoria's patrol chatter. Assess his dwindling water supply. The mundane tasks felt grounding, a necessary counterpoint to the impossible artifact hidden in his chest and the unnerving speck in his hand. He needed water badly. His last canister was nearly empty, the recycled fluid tasting more metallic than usual. The conduits he'd scavenged yesterday wouldn't be enough for a full refill, not at Scoria's extortionate rates, let alone the nutrient paste he also needed. But now he had options. He retrieved the hidden container of golden scrap. In the dim morning light, the objects seemed even more potent, their unnatural gleam a stark contrast to the surrounding decay. He selected a small piece, the transmuted bolt, weighing it in his hand. It felt substantial, enough for water, maybe even some high-energy ration bars. He wrapped the golden bolt carefully in a separate rag, tucking it deep within an inner pocket of his patched trousers. The artifact itself remained locked away. Bringing it out into the open felt unthinkable. His usual water source was a semi-independent trader named Griggs who operated a moisture condenser rig on the edge of Scoria's claimed territory. Griggs was weaselly and overpriced, but generally less overtly hostile than Scoria's direct vendors. Klynch hoped the small piece of gold would be unusual enough to pique Griggs's interest without setting off major alarms. The journey to Griggs's outpost took him through the Rust Flats, a wide expanse littered with the skeletons of ground vehicles and corroded shipping containers. The wind whipped sharp particles of rust and grit into his face. He kept his head down, his mechanical claw held ready, his good hand near his wrench. Every shadow could hold a threat, desperate scavengers, feral bots, or worse. He saw movement ahead, a hunched figure sorting through a pile of debris. Klynch tensed, ready to detour, but then recognized the familiar faded orange jumpsuit. Patch. The closest thing Xylos had to a doctor, operating out of a reinforced container clinic near the flats. She looked up as he approached, her face etched with weariness, framed by lank gray hair escaping her hood. "Klynch," she greeted him, her voice raspy. "Haven't seen you this way in a while. Everything functional." She gestured vaguely towards his mechanical arm. Patch had helped him graft the claw on after the accident, involving a collapsing derelict freighter's cargo lift. Her work was crude but effective. "Functional enough, Patch," he replied gruffly. "Just heading for water." Her sharp eyes narrowed slightly, scanning him. Patch missed very little. "You look wired, more than usual trouble." Just the usual trouble of staying alive on this scrap heap. He shifted his weight, suddenly conscious of the golden bolt pressing against his thigh, the tingling speck in his palm. "You find anything useful out here?" She sighed, kicking at a piece of twisted metal. The usual, degraded med packs, mostly empty stim injectors. Found a scavenger yesterday near the old chem plant zone. Bad case of nanite erosion. She shuddered. Nothing I could do but make him comfortable. This planet. It eats you, Klynch, from the outside in or the inside out. Her words resonated uncomfortably. He thought of the golden fleck, inside out. "Anything unusual lately?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "Strange finds, weird energy readings." Patch gave him a long, searching look. "There are always weird energy readings on Xylos. Why? Did you stumble onto something?" "No, just heard whispers, chatter." He needed to change the subject. "Need anything? Got a few spare power cells, maybe?" She shook her head. "I'm okay for cells right now. Water's the main thing, same as everyone. Heard Scoria raised the price again after that last plasma storm took out one of her auxiliary condensers." "Figures." Scoria never missed an opportunity to tighten her grip. "Be careful, Klynch," Patch said, her gaze lingering on his face. "You seem different today. Don't let this place get into your head more than it already has." He just grunted in response, giving her a curt nod before moving on, feeling her eyes on his back. Patch's concern, genuine as it likely was, felt like another layer of pressure. He couldn't afford scrutiny. Not now. Griggs's condenser rig was a haphazard collection of pipes, tanks, and humming machinery cobbled together around a rusted water tanker truck. A flickering neon sign above the main valve read, "Griggs H2O Best Prices, Terms Apply." Griggs himself, a small man with darting eyes and stained overalls, emerged from the tanker's cab as Klynch approached. "Klynch back again so soon." Griggs's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Rates went up, Scoria's orders, you got payment." Klynch didn't waste words. He pulled out the rag-wrapped object and carefully unwrapped the golden bolt, holding it out on his open flesh palm. Griggs's eyes widened almost comically. He snatched the bolt, holding it close to his face, turning it over and over. He bit it, leaving a faint indentation. His breath hitched. "Stars above, is this real?" he whispered, looking up at Klynch with a mixture of awe and suspicion. "Where did you get this?" "Found it," Klynch said flatly. "Salvage, lucky day. Is it good for water or not?" Griggs seemed to wrestle with himself for a moment. Greed warred with fear. Gold like this attracted the wrong kind of attention, Scoria's attention. But the value. "Yeah," Griggs said finally, his voice still hushed. He scurried over to the main valve. "Yeah, it's good. How much you need?" "Fill these 2 canisters," Klynch said, setting down the empty containers he carried strapped to his pack, "and throw in 3 high-energy ration bars." Griggs didn't even haggle. He filled the canisters with surprising speed, his eyes darting nervously around the rust flats as if expecting rivet to materialize from the haze. He shoved the ration bars into Klynch's hand. "There, done. Now get out of here, Klynch, and be careful, stuff like this." He nodded towards the golden bolt he'd quickly pocketed. It paints a target on your back. Always has been a target, Klynch replied, sealing his water canisters. He turned to leave, feeling a small measure of triumph mixed with rising anxiety. The transaction had worked. Too well, maybe. Griggs wouldn't keep his mouth shut for long. Someone would talk. The rumor mill on Xylos churned faster than any recycling unit. As he walked away from the condenser rig, the tingling in his palm intensified. It wasn't painful, not yet, but it was a constant, localized awareness. He glanced down. The golden fleck seemed brighter now, more prominent against his skin. He flexed his fingers. They felt stiff. Just the cold, he told himself. Just the damp. He decided to take a longer, more circuitous route back to his shelter, avoiding main pathways, sticking to the deeper junk canyons. He needed time to think, to let the attention from his transaction at Griggs's dissipate. He cut through a sector known as the glass spine, where shattered transparasteel from orbital habitats littered the ground like lethal snow. He rounded a towering pile of fused engine blocks and froze. Ahead, nestled in a hollow, were several figures. They were humanoid but utterly still, frozen in place like statues. Their forms were contorted, mouths open in silent screams, limbs twisted at unnatural angles. And they weren't made of stone or metal. They were gold. Solid, gleaming gold, reflecting the miserable gray light. Klynch recognized the style of clothing on one, the patched trousers, the heavy boots favored by scavengers. Another wore the remnants of some kind of off-world uniform. They were frozen mid-motion, one reaching out, another stumbling backwards, a third curled on the ground. Their eyes were wide, terrified, rendered in perfect, lifeless gold. The Golden Choir. He'd heard whispers, dismissed them as junk-induced hallucinations or campfire stories designed to scare greenhorns. Statues found in remote sectors, gleaming like treasure but radiating a palpable sense of wrongness. Now, seeing them himself, it wasn't a story. This is what the artifact did. This was the price. He backed away slowly, his heart hammering against his ribs. The golden figures seemed to watch him, their silent screams echoing in his mind. He looked down at his hand, at the glittering speck embedded in his flesh. It pulsed with a faint, cold light, mirroring the larger artifact hidden back in his shelter. The tingling wasn't just tingling anymore. It was a slow, creeping numbness spreading from the point of contact, working its way towards his fingers. The golden hand in the dome. The golden statues here. The golden fleck in his palm. It wasn't contamination. It wasn't a side effect. It was the beginning. Panic, cold, and absolute seized him. He turned and ran, stumbling over the sharp debris, his mechanical claw scrabbling for purchase, his flesh hand held stiffly at his side, radiating a terrifying golden cold. He had traded scrap for gold, but the artifact wasn't just changing metal. It had touched him, and now it was starting to change him too. Chapter 4: Whispers on the Wire. Fear was a corrosive acid on Xylos, eating away at reason, leaving only raw, jagged survival instinct. Klynch ran until his lungs burned, and the ache in his stump became a throbbing agony. He didn't stop until he reached the relative sanctuary of his engine nacelle shelter, sealing the entrance behind him with trembling hands. The image of the golden choir burned into his retinas. He ripped the glove off his right hand. The golden fleck seemed larger, no longer just a speck but a tiny, spreading lesion, like metallic frost creeping across his skin. The numbness had reached his knuckles, his fingers felt clumsy, alien. He flexed them desperately, trying to fight the encroaching stiffness. Panic tightened its icy grip around his chest. He needed to get rid of it, the artifact, chuck it into the deepest sludge pit, bury it under 1,000 tons of scrap, launch it into the toxic atmosphere. But the thought died as soon as it formed. He remembered the golden bolt he'd used to buy water, the sheer, undeniable power, the potential escape. Even facing the horrifying truth of the artifact's price, a treacherous part of him, the part forged in the desperation of Xylos, whispered of its necessity. Could he control it? Could he use its power without succumbing? His comm unit crackled to life, startling him. It was Jex's signal, sharp bursts of static followed by the kid's anxious voice. "Klynch, you there? Klynch, answer." He hesitated, then keyed the transmitter. "Yeah, Jex, what is it? I told you to lay low." I know, but things are weird out here. Scavenger chatter gone crazy. Everyone's talking about impossible gold. Someone matching your description traded a solid gold bolt for water at Griggs's rig." Jex's voice was tight with worry. "And Bolt's picking up something new. Encrypted signals bouncing all over Scoria's network frequency. Heavy traffic, she's looking for something, or someone." Klynch's blood ran cold. Griggs. The weasel hadn't wasted any time spreading the word. Impossible gold. It was already out. "Scrap," Klynch breathed. "How widespread is the talk?" "Spreading like rust fungus. Cable's node is buzzing. Everyone wants to know who found the mother lode." There was a pause, then Jex added, quieter, "Klynch, that thing you found in the dome, was it?" "Doesn't matter what it was," Klynch snapped, then regretted his harshness. "Just stay hidden, Jex, you and Bolt. Keep off the main channels, don't talk to anyone, especially not Cable." Cable, the information broker. Operating out of a heavily fortified comms tower overlooking the Slag Canyons, Cable traded in secrets, rumors, and salvaged data logs. If anyone could piece together the whispers and point Scoria in the right direction, it was Cable. And Cable's loyalty was always for sale. "Okay, Klynch, okay, but be careful. Scoria's put a bounty out, high value for the source of the gold." The comm clicked off. A bounty. Klynch leaned his head back against the cold metal wall, the hydraulic claw resting limply in his lap. He was marked, hunted. It wasn't just random scavengers he had to worry about now. It was Scoria's organized, ruthless machine. Her enforcers, like Rivet, wouldn't stop until they found him or his corpse. He looked at his afflicted hand again. The golden patch was definitely larger, maybe the size of his thumbnail now, intricate patterns forming within the metallic sheen. The numbness was spreading, a cold tide creeping towards his wrist. He tried making a fist. His fingers obeyed, but slowly, reluctantly, like waterlogged mechanisms. He needed information. He needed to know what this thing was, where it came from, if its effects could be stopped, reversed. The legends of the Golden Choir suddenly seemed less like myth and more like historical accounts. How many others had found artifacts like this? How many had ended up as silent, screaming statues? There was only one place to get that kind of information quickly, dangerous as it was: Cable. Going to Cable now, with a bounty on his head, was tantamount to walking into a glint maw's nest covered in shiny bait. But what choice did he have? Wait for Rivet's sledgehammer fist to smash down his shelter door. Wait for his own hand, his own arm, maybe his whole body, to turn into inert, precious metal. He made his decision. He had to risk it, but he couldn't go empty-handed. Cable dealt in valuable information and demanded valuable payment. Klynch looked at the locked chest containing the artifact. No, too risky, too dangerous. He looked at the container of golden scrap. He selected a few more pieces, the transmuted gear, the wire mesh. Enough to buy Cable's attention, hopefully enough to buy their silence too. He strapped his thermal lance across his back, checked the charge on his wrench's stun function, and pulled his cowl low. Before leaving, he paused, looking at his reflection in a shard of broken mirror scavenged from a luxury yacht's restroom. The face staring back was grim, lined with exhaustion and fear, but the eyes held a spark of desperate resolve. He also took one more thing: a heavy, insulated glove pulled tight over his right hand, hiding the spreading golden stain from view. Let them hunt for the source of the gold. They wouldn't find it on him. Not yet. The journey to Cable's tower was fraught with tension. Klynch moved like a ghost through the junkyard's arteries, sticking to shadows, using his knowledge of the shifting terrain to avoid open areas. He saw Scoria's patrols twice, heavily armed scavengers moving with purpose, sweeping sectors with thermal scanners. He pressed himself flat against piles of reeking refuse, Bolt's earlier warning echoing in his ears. They were definitely hunting. Cable's comms tower was an ugly spike of interconnected containers and salvaged antennae thrusting skyward from a plateau littered with burnt-out servers and processors. The Silicon Graveyard. Access was via a single, heavily reinforced lift cage, guarded by automated turrets and visible cameras. Klynch approached the designated hailing point, a rusty intercom panel 50 meters from the lift base. "Cable, it's Klynch. Need to trade." Static crackled, then a synthesized voice, smooth and unsettlingly neutral, replied. It was Vox, Cable's mouthpiece and chief security. "Cable is processing. State your offer and query." The voice modulator glitched slightly on the word processing. "Offer high-grade material, query, information, artifacts, transmutation legends, golden choir." Klynch kept his voice low and even. A long pause. Klynch could feel unseen eyes watching him, likely through sniper scopes. The turrets atop the tower swiveled slightly, tracking his position. "Material verification required," Vox droned. "Deposit sample in the receiving chute." A pneumatic tube hissed open near the intercom. Klynch carefully placed the golden gear into the tube. It whisked away upwards. Another tense silence stretched, broken only by the wind whistling through the dead servers. He kept his good hand near his wrench, his claw flexed. "Sample verified," Vox's voice returned. The neutrality seemed strained, almost excited. "Asset value, significant, access granted, cage descending." The lift cage groaned its way down the side of the tower. Klynch stepped inside, the gate locking behind him with a heavy clang. The ascent was slow, offering a panoramic view of the junkyard spreading out below, a vast, diseased scab on the planet's face. He gripped the cage bars, his gloved hand aching with cold stiffness. The cage docked at the top level. The door opened into a large, dimly lit space crammed with blinking server racks, holographic displays showing data streams and surveillance feeds, and tangled nests of wiring. In the center, suspended in a complex harness of cables and life support tubes, was Cable. It was impossible to tell what Cable had been originally. Flesh and machine were interwoven. Implants studded a pale scalp. Optical sensors glowed where eyes should be. Limbs were replaced with articulated chrome prosthetics. Data jacks plugged directly into ports on their skull. Vox, the scavenger with the voice modulator, stood silently beside the harness, holding a wicked-looking pulse rifle. Klynch, Cable's voice was a dry whisper amplified by speakers embedded in the harness. It lacked the synthetic quality of Vox, but was equally unsettling. "You bring interesting commodities." One of Cable's multifaceted optical sensors focused intently on Klynch and asked dangerous questions. "The bounty suggests the questions are timely," Klynch countered, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. "Scoria is agitated," Cable acknowledged. "She believes someone has found a source of unlimited wealth, a dangerous belief. It destabilizes the ecosystem." Cable's prosthetic fingers tapped rhythmically on the harness frame. "You wish to know about things that turn junk to gold, things that turn flesh to gold. I need to know what it is, where it comes from, if it can be stopped." Klynch's voice was tight. Cable was silent for a moment, processing. Holographic symbols flickered across their optical sensors. "Such knowledge is rare, costly. The gear was sufficient for entry, not for the deep archives." Klynch pulled out the golden wire mesh. "And this?" Cable's sensors brightened. Vox shifted uneasily. "Acceptable. The archives whisper of the Aurum artifacts. Remnants of the architects, a species predating most recorded galactic history, believed extinct. They worked wonders with matter transmutation, energy manipulation, and turning people into statues," Klynch pressed, gesturing with his gloved hand. "A side effect, or perhaps the intended purpose for some artifacts," Cable whispered. "The architect technology operated on principles we barely comprehend. Resonance cascade biometallic conversion. It interacts with living organisms unpredictably, sometimes enhancing, sometimes preserving." Cable's gaze lingered on Klynch's gloved hand. "The choir you mentioned, victims or warnings. Can it be stopped, reversed?" Klynch's voice was barely a whisper. "Reversed," Cable emitted a dry chuckle like rustling static. "Unlikely. Once the conversion begins, the matrix cascade is typically irreversible at the molecular level. Stopping it, perhaps. If the energy source is removed before full conversion, or if the artifact is destroyed, though architect tech is notoriously durable. Some legends speak of specific frequencies, energy dampeners, but these are fragments, unverified." Klynch felt a crushing weight of despair. Irreversible. He was running out of time. Where did it come from? The one eye? He stopped himself. The one rumored to be active now. Cable's sensors flickered. Records are fragmented. Long-range scans detected a unique energy signature matching architect profiles within a derelict vessel. Designation *Ophidian Drift. Crashed decades ago in Sector Gamma 7, near the old chem plant zone. Near where Patch had found the scavenger dying of nanite erosion. Not far from the glass spine where he saw the golden choir. Thank you, Cable. Klynch turned to leave. One more transaction, Klynch. Cable's voice stopped him. Information for information. Klynch tensed. What? Scoria is offering a significant reward not just for the artifact but for its current possessor. Your location is valuable data. Cable's voice was devoid of malice, pure calculation. Your payment covers the archive access. It does not cover my discretion. Klynch stared at the augmented broker, then at Vox, whose pulse rifle was now aimed squarely at his chest. Betrayal. He should have expected it. How much? Klynch asked, his mind racing. The remaining gold you carry, Cable stated flatly. And a promise, future considerations, should you survive. Klynch's hand tightened on his wrench. Fight. He wouldn't make it out of the tower alive. He slowly reached into his pocket, pulled out the remaining golden scraps. He tossed them onto the floor near Cable's harness. There you have my word, future considerations. It was a lie, but Cable wouldn't know that. Or maybe they would and didn't care. Cable's sensors pulsed. Accepted. Vox, escort our client out. Vox lowered the rifle slightly, gesturing towards the lift cage with the barrel. The ride down felt even slower than the ascent. Klynch's mind was a whirlwind of terror and desperate calculation. Cable had sold him out. Scoria knew he had the artifact, knew he was asking about it. She would know he was afflicted. She wouldn't just want the artifact now. She'd want him, perhaps believing he held the key to controlling it, or maybe just wanting to dissect him to understand the process. He was no longer just hunted. He was the prize. As the cage reached the ground and the door opened onto the desolate silicon graveyard, Klynch knew his fragile existence on the Junkyard Planet had just entered its most dangerous phase. He had to run, hide, and somehow find a way to fight back against Scoria, against the planet, and against the golden doom spreading from his own hand. Chapter 5. The Gilded Garden. Panic was a poor shield against the crushing reality of Xylos. Klynch forced it down, replacing it with a cold, calculating dread. Cable's betrayal wasn't just a setback, it was a death sentence timer. Scoria knew. She knew he had the artifact, she knew he was asking about its effects, she likely knew why he was asking. His gloved hand throbbed with a dull, chilling ache, the stiffness creeping perceptibly higher, past his wrist now. He couldn't go back to the engine nacelle shelter. Cable's surveillance was too thorough. Scoria's hunters would be waiting. He needed somewhere new, somewhere unexpected, somewhere difficult to track. He needed to disappear into the deepest guts of the junkyard. His thoughts turned to Jex and Bolt. The kid was resourceful, knew pathways Klynch didn't, and Bolt's senses were invaluable. But contacting them was risky. If Cable was monitoring general frequencies, any transmission could lead Scoria's hound straight to them. He decided against it. a pang of guilt mixing with the fear. Protecting them meant staying away, at least for now. He needed a destination. Somewhere cables drones might overlook, somewhere Scoria's ground patrols would hesitate to tread. Sector Gamma 7, near the old chem plant where the asterisk Ophidian drift had supposedly crashed, where Patch had found the nanite victim, where he had seen the golden choir. It was a toxic quagmire, riddled with chemical sludge pools and unstable ground, plagued by mutated flora and fauna. Dangerous, yes, but perhaps safer than facing Rivet and his sledgehammer fists out in the open sectors. And maybe, just maybe, the crash site held answers, or a weapon, or simply a place to make a final stand. Getting there required crossing the Scrap Sea, a vast, treacherous expanse of smaller, looser debris that shifted like liquid underfoot, punctuated by islands of more stable wreckage. It was slow, hazardous going. He moved cautiously, testing each foothold, his mechanical claw often used as an anchor, digging into mountains of corroded pipe and fused circuitry. The wind carried the stench of chemical fires and ancient decay. Shimmer rats scurried in the periphery, their rainbow pelts glinting unnaturally. His right hand, even within the heavy glove, felt increasingly alien. The numbness was profound, the cold deep and biting. He could barely curl his fingers now. He tried to ignore it, focusing on navigation, on listening for the telltale sounds of pursuit, the whine of anti-grav bikes, the heavy tread of augmented enforcers. He skirted the edges of a massive sludge pool, its surface bubbling with noxious gases, the air thick enough to chew. Twisted, skeletal trees grew nearby, their bark like rusted metal, their leaves brittle and sharp, ferrous blight, Patch had called it. He gave them a wide berth, remembering her description of its corrosive touch. As dusk began its dreary descent, painting the scrap heaps in shades of gray and blood orange, Klynch stumbled upon it again. Not the same location as before, but unmistakably the same horror. Another cluster of golden statues. This time it wasn't just a few scattered figures. It was a tableau. Perhaps a dozen individuals frozen in a scene of apparent commerce or argument around what looked like the remnants of a makeshift market stall, also partially transmuted. Barrels, crates, even scraps of purported goods were rendered in solid gold, gleaming obscenely in the dying light. One figure was mid-stride, leg lifted, forever about to take another step. Another had its hand outstretched, golden fingers inches from a golden canister. A third lay slumped against a pile of golden tires, head bowed. The Gilded Garden, Klynch thought, the name springing unwanted into his mind. A grotesque monument to the artifact's deadly allure. He approached cautiously, a morbid fascination overriding his instinct to flee. He needed to understand. He moved closer, his lamp beam playing over the frozen figures. The detail was terrifyingly perfect. Every fold of clothing, every strand of hair, every expression of fear, surprise, or greed captured forever in inert, precious metal. He noticed something he hadn't before. Faint lines like cracks webbed the surface of some statues, and near the base of one a small scattering of golden dust lay on the junk-strewn ground, as if the statue itself was slowly eroding. Was the transformation unstable, or was something else at play? His attention was drawn to one particular statue, a figure half-turned, looking back over its shoulder, face locked in an expression of sudden, horrified realization. Its right hand, held defensively outwards, was only partially transformed. The fingers were solid gold, but the gold faded into metallic, amber-like translucence around the wrist, and then, shockingly, back into what looked like petrified gray flesh near the elbow. Incomplete transformation, stopped mid-process. Why? Klynch circled the statue, his lamp beam tracing the transition. Had the artifact been removed? Had the victim somehow resisted? He leaned closer, examining the point where gold met petrified flesh. And then he saw it. Embedded in the golden wrist, almost invisible against the gleaming surface, were tiny, moving specks. Metallic mites like the ones Scrabbler Vesk wore, but these were golden, burrowing into the statue, seemingly consuming the transmuted material. A faint skittering sound reached his ears, not from the statue, from nearby. He snapped his lamp beam towards the sound, heart pounding. Clustered in the shadow of a golden barrel were dozens, maybe hundreds of the golden mites, flowing like liquid metal over the junk. They seemed drawn to the statues, feeding on them. Were they a product of the artifact, a side effect of the transmutation, or something else entirely, a specialized scavenger adapted to this specific, bizarre food source? As he watched, mesmerized and repulsed, a larger shadow detached itself from the deeper gloom behind the market stall remnants. It moved with a low, sinuous grace, unnervingly silent for its size. 2 points of reflected light gleamed like predatory eyes. Klynch backed away slowly, raising his thermal lance. The creature emerged fully into the edge of his lamplight. It was reptilian, low-slung, maybe 3 meters long, its hide a mottled patchwork of dull scales and fused-on shards of scrap metal and glass. Its head was wide, jaws powerful, filled with serrated teeth that looked like broken shards of obsidian. It moved with its belly low to the ground, its eyes fixed not on Klynch, but on the golden statues. Glint Maw, the creature of Junkyard legend, said to be drawn to shiny objects, hoarding them in its hidden lair. Klynch had always dismissed the stories as exaggerations. Seeing it now, watching it approach the gilded garden with obvious intent, was another layer of surreal horror. The Glint Maw ignored Klynch completely, its attention fixated on the golden figures. It sniffed at the base of one statue, then nudged the half-transformed figure Klynch had been examining. Its long, forked tongue flicked out, tasting the air or perhaps the gold itself. It seemed almost reverent. Then, with sudden, shocking violence, it opened its jaws wide and clamped down on the golden arm of the statue. There was a sickening asterisk crunch of metal yielding, and the creature tore the arm free, gold dust scattering as the connection point fractured. It began to chew, the sound of its powerful jaws grinding the solid gold echoing in the unnatural stillness. Klynch watched, frozen. The creature wasn't just attracted to the gold, it was asterisk eating it. Did it derive sustenance from the metal, or was it driven by some bizarre instinct? The golden mites surrounding the statues seemed agitated by the Glint Maw's presence, retreating slightly but not dispersing. The Glint Maw finished the arm, swallowed with a thick, gulping sound, then turned its attention to another statue, preparing to take another bite of the forbidden treasure. This was Klynch's chance. While the creature was distracted, he needed to get away to continue towards Sector Gamma 7. He began to back away slowly, carefully, placing his feet deliberately on the shifting junk. His mechanical claw scraped against a loose piece of plasteel. The sound, though small, cut through the air. The glint maw froze, its chewing stopping instantly. Its head snapped around, the multifaceted eyes fixing directly on Klynch. The reflected light in them seemed to intensify, burning with cold, predatory intelligence. It had ignored him before, focused on the gold, but now it recognized him as an intrusion, or perhaps it sensed something else. Klynch slowly raised the thermal lance, the tip beginning to glow. The glint maw lowered its head, emitting a low, guttural hiss, the sound vibrating in Klynch's chest. Shards of metal embedded in its hide scraped against each other as it tensed its powerful muscles. It wasn't just the statues that drew it anymore. Klynch felt a terrifying certainty creep into his mind. The creature wasn't just attracted to the gold of the statues. It was attracted to the asterisk source asterisk, the energy, the power emanating from him, from the spreading stain beneath his glove. The glint maw took a step towards him, silent and menacing. Klynch stood his ground, the glowing tip of the lance held steady, his own afflicted hand throbbing beneath the glove, a cold beacon in the desolate gilded garden, calling the monster towards him. Chapter 6: The Hunter's Shadow. The glint maw flowed forward, a nightmare of fused scrap and predatory intent. Its eyes, reflecting Klynch's lamp beam, seemed to hold a cold, ancient hunger. Klynch didn't dare run. Turning his back on this thing felt like suicide. He held the thermal lance steady, its tip now glowing cherry red, casting flickering light on the grotesque golden statues surrounding them. "Easy now," Klynch muttered, the words absurd even to himself. "Just passing through." The creature hissed again, a sound like grinding metal, and took another deliberate step closer. It wasn't rushing. It was stalking, assessing. Its attention seemed divided between Klynch himself, and Klynch realized with a jolt of fear his gloved right hand. Did it sense the artifact's taint? Could it smell the nascent gold forming beneath the skin? Klynch needed to break the standoff, create distance. He fired the thermal lance. Not at the creature, he doubted it would pierce that armored hide effectively, but at a precariously balanced stack of corroded engine parts just behind it. The beam struck true, slicing through rusted supports. With a groaning screech, the junk pile tilted and collapsed, raining heavy debris towards the glint maw. The creature reacted instantly, faster than anything its size should move. It leaped sideways, avoiding the brunt of the collapse, but several heavy pieces glanced off its back with dull clangs. It let out an infuriated roar, a sound far louder and more terrifying than the earlier hiss, and fixed its gaze fully on Klynch, ignoring the golden statues entirely now. The hunt was on. Klynch didn't wait. He turned and scrambled away, plunging deeper into the maze of junk surrounding the gilded garden. He heard the glint maw behind him, the heavy scrabbling of its claws on metal, the crashing sounds as it bulldozed through obstacles. It was faster than he'd anticipated, terrifyingly agile amidst the debris. He risked a glance back. The creature was gaining, its wide jaws open, revealing rows of serrated, obsidian-like teeth. Its eyes burned in the darkness. Klynch pushed himself harder, his breath coming in ragged gasps, the ache in his stump flaring. His afflicted hand felt like a block of ice, heavy and unresponsive, throwing off his balance. He rounded a sharp corner, skidding on loose gravel made of shattered ceramics, and saw salvation, or at least, a temporary reprieve. A narrow fissure between two colossal, fused-together ore haulers, barely wide enough for him to squeeze through sideways. He threw himself into the gap, the rough metal scraping against his pack and clothes. He pushed deeper into the fissure, the darkness absolute beyond the reach of his shoulder lamp. Behind him, he heard the glint maw reach the entrance. A frustrated snarl, the sound of claws scraping against the narrow opening. It was too large to follow. Klynch leaned against the cold metal wall, trying to catch his breath, his heart hammering. Safe, for now, but trapped. The fissure seemed to extend deeper into the junk heap, but there was no guarantee it led anywhere useful, or that the glint maw wouldn't simply wait for him to emerge. He needed to think. His flight from Cable's tower, the encounter with the Golden Choir, now the glint maw. Scoria's forces couldn't be far behind. Cable would have sold his likely trajectory, heading towards Sector Gamma 7. The glint maw might have inadvertently saved him from running directly into an ambush, but it had also cornered him. A faint sound reached him from deeper within the fissure. A rhythmic asterisk drip, 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 water, or something less pleasant like chemical runoff. He shone his lamp deeper. The fissure widened slightly after about 10 meters, opening into a small cavern formed by the collapsed interiors of the ore haulers. In the center, dripping from a tangle of corroded pipes overhead, was a steady stream of viscous, oily fluid pooling on the floor. The air here was thick with the smell of ozone and decay. And he wasn't alone. Huddled against the far wall, barely visible, was a figure, small, thin, wrapped in rags. Klynch raised his wrench defensively. "Who's there?" The figure flinched, then slowly looked up. It was Jex. "Klynch," the kid whispered, eyes wide with fear. Bolt wasn't visible. "Jex, what are you doing here? I told you to stay hidden." Relief warred with anger and fear for the kid's safety. "We were trying to find you," Jex said, voice trembling slightly. "Bolt tracked your scent, but then we heard the patrol, Scoria's thugs. They were everywhere, asking about you, flashing your description. We had to ditch Bolt's main chassis, too noisy. He's running on minimal stealth mode." Jex gestured towards a bundle of rags nearby, which emitted a faint blue optical flicker. Bolt's core unit detached from its larger body. "We ducked in here when we heard that thing." Jex shuddered, nodding towards the fissure entrance where the glint maw presumably still lurked. Klynch lowered his wrench, rubbing his temples with his good hand. Scoria's net was closing faster than he thought. Jex being here complicated everything, but also, maybe offered a chance. "All right," Klynch said, keeping his voice low. "We need to find another way out. That thing outside won't wait forever. Bolt," he addressed the bundle of rags, "can you scan any structural weaknesses, tunnels, vents?" The blue light flickered. A soft whirring sound emanated from the core unit. After a moment, Jex relayed the information. Bolt says the haulers are mostly fused solid, but there's a maintenance conduit running downwards, about 20 meters back. Narrow, might lead somewhere. Downwards, into the underjunk, the deeper, more compressed layers of xylos. Klynch hesitated. The underjunk was legendarily dangerous, filled with unstable pockets, toxic gas, and things best left undisturbed. But staying here meant facing the glint maw, and beyond that, scoria. Okay, Klynch decided. Down it is. Jex, you carry Bolt's core. Stay right behind me. They found the conduit opening. A rusted circular hatch pried partially open near the floor. Klynch used his claw to wrench it further, revealing a dark, narrow tube descending vertically, rough maintenance rungs embedded in the side. The air wafting up smelled foul, stagnant. Looks tight, Jex muttered nervously. No choice, Klynch said. He looked back towards the fissure entrance. Silence. Was the glint maw gone, or just waiting patiently? He couldn't risk it. I'll go first. Keep the lamp pointed down. Move slow. He swung himself into the conduit, his boots finding the first rung. The space was claustrophobic, pressing in on all sides. His pack scraped against the corroded metal. He began the slow descent, his mechanical claw surprisingly useful for maintaining grip. His right hand, numb and stiff within the glove, was almost useless. Each downward step felt like plunging deeper into the planet's diseased bowels. Jex followed, clutching Bolt's core unit, the kids breathing audible in the confined space. The only sounds were their movements, the distant drip from the cavern above, and the low hum emanating from Bolt's core. After descending maybe 30 meters, the rungs ended abruptly. Klynch shone his lamp down. The conduit opened into a wider space below, a tunnel formed from compressed layers of ancient refuse, reinforced here and there with buckled structural beams. It looked like an old service corridor, long since buried. Klynch dropped the last meter, landing with a thud on the debris-strewn floor. Jex landed beside him a moment later. They were in the underjunk. The air was heavy, humid, tasting of mold and methane. Strange phosphorescent fungi grew in patches on the walls, casting an eerie, pale green light. "Which way now?" Jex whispered, looking around nervously. The tunnel stretched into darkness in both directions. Bolt's core emitted a series of soft chirps. "Bolt says, faint energy readings to the left," Jex translated. "Consistent with old reactor shielding. Might lead towards Gamma-7." Left it was. They moved cautiously through the tunnel, the silence amplifying every small sound, the crunch of their boots on unseen detritus, the skittering of unseen things in the walls. Klynch kept his thermal lance ready, sweeping the beam ahead. The underjunk was disorienting, a labyrinth of forgotten passages and collapsed chambers. They rounded a bend and stopped dead. Blocking the tunnel ahead was a figure, hulking, silhouetted against the faint fungal glow. Even in the dim light, the crude plating bolted onto massive shoulders and the weapon held ready, something resembling an industrial shear, were unmistakable. Rivet, Scoria's chief enforcer. He wasn't alone. Two more of Scoria's thugs flanked him, armed with pulse rifles. They must have tracked them, maybe anticipated their descent into the underjunk. cables information, or just relentless hunting. Rivet took a heavy step forward, his augmented footsteps crunching loudly. His face, barely visible beneath a crude helmet, was set in a grim expression. "Klynch, the boss wants a word, and the shiny toy you found." His voice was a low growl amplified by a cheap throat mic. "Come quiet and maybe the kid walks away." Klynch pushed Jex slightly behind him. His mind raced, trapped between the glint maw above and Scoria's hammer below. No way forward, no way back. He looked at his useless right hand, hidden in the glove. Then he looked at the thermal lance. Then an idea sparked, desperate, reckless, potentially suicidal. He subtly shifted his grip on the lance, angling it slightly downwards. "Not interested in talking to your boss, Rivet," Klynch said, his voice steady despite the tremor running through him. Rivet chuckled, a harsh, grating sound. "Didn't figure you would be." He hefted the industrial shear weapon. "Shame." He lunged, faster than his bulk suggested, the shear whining as he brought it down in a deadly arc. Klynch reacted on pure instinct. He dodged sideways, firing the thermal lance not at Rivet but at the floor directly in front of him, slicing into the compressed junk. Simultaneously, he ripped the glove off his right hand. The effect was immediate. The sudden exposure of the spreading golden affliction, now covering most of his hand and wrist in intricate, glowing patterns, flared under the fungal light. It pulsed with cold, alien energy. Rivet, momentarily thrown off by the unexpected floor blast, faltered. His eyes and those of his thugs were drawn irresistibly to the gleaming, unnatural hand. "What in the—" one of the thugs started to say. Klynch didn't give them time to recover. He thrust his golden hand towards them, not as a weapon but as a beacon, a lure. He focused not on the artifact's power, but on the memory of the glint maw's terrifying hunger, its attraction to the gold, to the energy. He amplified that feeling, projecting his own fear and the artifact's alien resonance outwards, upwards, like a silent scream into the junk above. Here the silent call pulsed. "Here is the shiny, here is the power, come and get it." For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Rivet recovered his balance, snarling, raising the shear again. Then the ceiling above them exploded downwards. With a deafening roar, the glint maw smashed through the compressed junk of the tunnel roof, landing amidst the terrified group, drawn by Klynch's desperate, focused call. Dust and debris rained down. The creature bellowed, its eyes locking onto Klynch's glowing golden hand, then swiveling towards the nearest source of movement, Rivet and his thugs. Chaos erupted. Pulse rifles fired wildly. Rivet roared, swinging his shear at the creature. The glint maw, enraged and surrounded, lashed out with blinding speed, jaws snapping, claws tearing. "Now!" Klynch yelled, grabbing Jex. He plunged into the swirling dust and chaos, sprinting past the horrific battle, deeper into the underjunk tunnel, Bolt's core clutched tight in Jex's arms. Behind them, the sounds of the brutal, unequal fight, monstrous roars, human screams, the shriek of tortured metal faded into the oppressive silence of the depths. He didn't know if he'd saved them or just delayed the inevitable, but he had bought them time, paid for in gold, fear, and the terrifying power blooming from his own dying hand. Chapter 7: Scoria's Price. The echoes of the battle faded behind them, swallowed by the oppressive silence of the underjunk. Klynch ran, pulling Jex along, Bolt's core bumping against the kid's side. They didn't stop until the tunnel branched, offering a momentary choice, a brief respite from the immediate terror. Klynch leaned against a sweating, fungal-slick wall, gasping for breath. His mechanical claw clamped tight, his golden hand throbbing with a cold fire that seemed to leach the strength from his entire body. Did we lose them? Jex panted, wide-eyed, peering back into the darkness. We lost Rivet, Klynch said grimly. Or rather, the glint maw found him. Scoria won't stop, she'll send more. He looked down at his hand. The golden transformation was undeniably advancing, creeping past his wrist like a metallic tide. The intricate patterns shifted subtly, mesmerizing and horrifying. He felt detached from it, the limb heavy and unresponsive, yet paradoxically alive with a cold, alien energy. Bolt's core emitted a series of low clicks. Jex listened intently. Bolt says residual energy signatures detected behind us, multiple contacts moving slowly, and the big one, the reptile signature. It's moving away, deeper into the side tunnels. Seems like it won the fight. Good for the glint maw. Bad for anyone else wandering these tunnels. But at least it wasn't chasing them directly. The other contacts, though, Scoria's reinforcements picking through the aftermath, likely resuming the hunt. We need to keep moving, Klynch said. Bolt, which way looks clearest? Still heading towards Gamma 7. Another series of clicks. Affirmative, Jex relayed. This branch seems less structurally compromised, still picking up those old reactor shielding traces. They pushed onward, deeper into the labyrinth. The underjunk was a disorienting hellscape. Tunnels twisted unpredictably, sometimes opening into vast, cathedral-like caverns filled with mountains of compressed, ancient trash, dripping with foul liquids. Other times, they narrowed into crawl spaces barely wide enough to squeeze through. Strange noises echoed from unseen depths, the grinding of shifting refuse, the skittering of unknown creatures, faint, rhythmic pounding that might have been derelict machinery or something far worse. Klynch's afflicted hand was becoming a serious liability. He couldn't grip properly, couldn't brace himself effectively. The cold emanating from it was bone-deep, making him shiver despite the humid, stagnant air. The temptation to try using the artifact again, to transmute something, asterisk anything, just to feel its power, was a constant, insidious whisper in the back of his mind. He fought it, remembering the golden choir, feeling the irreversible change in his own flesh. They navigated by Bolt's sparse readings and Klynch's scavenger instincts, conserving the lamp's power, relying mostly on the eerie fungal glow. Jex, despite the fear, proved resilient, scrambling over obstacles and translating Bolt's synthesized impressions of the route ahead. The kid's presence was both a burden and a strange comfort. Klynch felt responsible, a feeling he hadn't willingly shouldered in years. After what felt like hours, Bolt signaled a proximity alert. Energy source stronger now, Jex reported. Different signature overlaid, active power, technology, and life signs, multiple, stationary, ahead. Klynch slowed their pace, signaling for silence. They crept forward to where the tunnel opened into another large cavern. This one was different, less chaotic. Sections had been cleared, reinforced with salvaged girders. Working glow rods illuminated makeshift structures, tents, workshops, a central command post built from stacked cargo containers. And dominating the far end of the cavern, half buried in collapsed rock and junk, was the unmistakable, jagged wreckage of a large spacecraft, the asterisk Ophidian drift. Scoria, she had found the crash site first. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter of the makeshift camp. Technicians worked under floodlights near the exposed section of the ship's hull, cutting torches flaring, diagnostic equipment humming. Klynch counted at least 15, maybe 20 personnel, and standing near the command post, directing operations, was Scoria herself. She was unmistakable even from a distance. Tall, imposing, clad in practical but well-maintained gear augmented with pieces of salvaged, ornate armor that glittered under the lights. Her face was sharp, weathered, framed by tightly braided black hair shot through with gray. She radiated an aura of absolute authority, her gaze sharp and calculating as she surveyed the work on the derelict ship. Scrap, Klynch breathed. They had walked right into her forward base. "What do we do?" Jex whispered, trembling. Klynch scanned the setup. Scoria wasn't just here. She was actively trying to breach the asterisk Ophidian drift. Did she know the artifact came from inside? Cable must have told her everything. She wasn't just hunting Klynch anymore. She was going directly to the source, perhaps hopping to find more artifacts or the secrets to controlling them. He needed to get closer to hear what they were saying to understand her plan. But the cavern floor was too open, the patrols too alert. His eyes scanned the cavern walls, searching for an alternative route. High up, near the ceiling, shrouded in shadows, he spotted a network of old ventilation shafts and maintenance catwalks, remnants of whatever structure existed here before it was buried. "Up there," Klynch whispered, pointing with his claw. "Catwalks might give us a vantage point." Getting there was risky. They had to backtrack slightly, find an access point, and climb without being detected. Bolt's minimal chassis wouldn't be able to make the climb easily. "Jex, you need to hide Bolt's core," Klynch instructed. "Find a secure spot back down the tunnel, then meet me at the base of that collapsed support pillar." He indicated a rusted metal column leading upwards towards the shadowed structures. "Can you do that?" Jex nodded grimly, clutching Bolt's core protectively. "Yeah, be careful, Klynch." They separated. Klynch watched Jex disappear back into the tunnel darkness, then made his way stealthily towards the chosen pillar. He waited, hidden behind a mound of debris, his senses on high alert. Minutes crawled by. Finally, Jex reappeared, moving silently through the shadows. "Bolt secure," Jex whispered, "hidden in a pipe junction." "Good, now the climb." The pillar was slick with grime and fungal growth, the handholds precarious. Klynch went first, relying heavily on his mechanical claw, his golden hand almost useless for gripping. Jex followed, lighter and more agile, moving like a shadow. It was a nerve-wracking ascent, every scrape of a boot threatening to alert the guards below. Finally, they reached the catwalk level. It was a skeleton of rusted metal suspended 50 meters above the cavern floor, shrouded in thick shadows. They moved slowly along the precarious walkway, dust raining down silently with each step. They found a position directly overlooking Scoria's command post, hidden behind a large ventilation duct. From here, they could hear the voices below clearly. Scoria stood with two technicians, examining a holographic schematic projected from a portable device. Hull integrity is compromised, but the primary vault seems intact, one technician reported. Energy readings are faint but match architect profiles cable provided. Whatever's inside is dormant but potent. Dormant is not deactivated, Scoria said, her voice sharp, cutting through the cavern's low hum. I want that vault breached within the hour. Use the plasma charges if you have to, but minimize collateral damage to the contents. According to Cable's data, the fail-safes on these things can be indiscriminate. Plasma charges risk destabilizing the entire wreck, boss, the other technician cautioned. And we still don't know what happened to Rivet's team. Scoria waved a dismissive hand. Rivet was clumsy, likely ran afoul of some local fauna, collateral losses, focus on the objective. That vault contains the source. More artifacts, control mechanisms, schematics, the power to reshape this entire scrap heap. Her eyes glittered with ambition. Klynch was just the appetizer, proof of concept. This, she gestured towards the asterisk Ophidian drift, is the main course. Klynch felt a chill deeper than the one emanating from his hand. Scoria wasn't just after wealth. She wanted control, the kind of power the architects wielded. If she got her hands on whatever was inside that vault. What about Klynch? The first technician asked. He's still out there, and afflicted. Cable suggested he might be key to interfacing with the technology. Scoria's lips thinned into a cruel smile. He's irrelevant now except as a specimen. Let the patrols hunt him down. If they bring him back alive, Patch can have fun studying the transformation process before we dispose of him. She glanced towards a reinforced tent set apart from the others, Patch's makeshift clinic, apparently relocated or replicated here. If he's dead, just bring back the golden parts. I want to understand the decay Cable mentioned. Klynch saw Jex flinch beside him. Patch. Scoria had her here, likely against her will, forcing her to aid this insane quest. The price for this power, Scoria mused, looking at the schematic again. Control over xylos, water, resources, access off-world on my terms. No more groveling for scraps, we become the power. She turned to her technicians. Breach the vault, now I want what's inside. The technicians hurried off towards the wreck. Scoria remained, staring at the breached hull of the asterisk Ophidian drift, her face illuminated by the cutting torches, her expression one of raptorial hunger. Klynch knew he couldn't let her succeed. Whatever was in that vault, it couldn't fall into her hands. He had to stop her, not just for his own survival, but for Patch, for Jex, for everyone else trapped on this miserable planet under Scoria's thumb. But how? He was one man, increasingly disabled, against Scoria's small army. He looked down at his golden hand, pulsing faintly in the shadows. It was a curse, a death sentence. But Cable had mentioned interaction, interfacing. Could this affliction, this terrifying connection to the architect technology be used? He looked at Jex, the kid's face pale with fear but resolute. He thought of Patch, trapped in Scoria's camp. He thought of the Golden Choir, the silent victims. Scoria saw the artifact's power as a means to an end, absolute control. Klynch saw only the price, and he knew with chilling certainty that Scoria was willing to make everyone else pay it. He had to intervene. He had to get down there, disrupt the breaching operation, maybe even use the artifact's energy against Scoria herself. It was madness. It was suicide. But watching Scoria unleash the full horror of the architect's legacy upon Xylos was unthinkable. He gripped the rusted railing of the catwalk, his decision made, the cold fire in his golden hand burning with desperate resolve. Chapter 8: The Spreading Stain. The air on the catwalk crackled with tension, mirroring the energy building within Klynch. Below, Scoria's technicians swarmed around the exposed vault door of the asterisk Ophidian drift, setting up plasma cutters and diagnostic probes. The low hum of their equipment was a counterpoint to the frantic pounding of Klynch's own heart. He had maybe minutes before they breached the vault and unleashed gods knew what kind of architect horror or power into Scoria's greedy hands. "We gotta stop them," Jex whispered, eyes fixed on the scene below. "But how? They'll cut us down before we get halfway across the cavern floor." Klynch surveyed the scene again, his gaze lingering on the heavy machinery being used, the power conduits snaking across the floor, the volatile chemical containers stacked near the wreck. An idea, desperate and dangerous, began to form. It relied on chaos, distraction, and the unpredictable nature of the junkyard itself. "We don't go across the floor," Klynch said, his voice low and urgent. "We use the environment, create a diversion, something big enough to pull guards away from the vault, give us a window." "A diversion like what?" Jex asked, skeptical. Klynch pointed with his claw towards a section of the cavern roof directly above the main cluster of Scoria's equipment, near the vault entrance. It looked unstable, a mass of compacted junk held together by sheer pressure and luck. "Like that. If we can destabilize that section, bring it down. It could bury them, and the vault," Jex's eyes widened. "Exactly. Buys us time, causes chaos, maybe damages their breaching gear." Klynch knew it was reckless. It could kill indiscriminately. But Scoria's deliberate pursuit of the architect power felt like the greater, more certain doom. "We need a charge, something focused." He thought of his thermal lance. Powerful, but maybe not enough to trigger a major collapse from this distance, and the beam would be too obvious. His gaze fell upon his own afflicted hand. The golden stain now extended halfway up his forearm, intricate patterns shimmering under the faint light, the cold intensifying. It pulsed with contained energy, the alien power of the artifact now literally a part of him. Cable had mentioned resonance cascade, architect tech interacting with energy fields. Could he use the energy within him? Focus it. It was an insane gamble. He had no idea how to control it, what it would do to him. It could accelerate the transformation, burn him out from the inside, or simply do nothing. But looking down at Scoria, poised to unlock unimaginable power, he felt he had no other choice. Okay, Klynch said, taking a deep breath. New plan, I'm going to try something, might work, might kill me. Either way, it should create a diversion. When it happens, you move. Get down to Patch's tent. Free her if you can. Get her out of here. Understand? Jex stared at him, then at Klynch's glowing golden arm, understanding dawning in the kid's eyes. Klynch, what are you going to do? Something stupid, Klynch admitted grimly. Just be ready. Go. He gave Jex a gentle push towards a nearby service ladder leading down into the cavern's shadowed periphery. Jex hesitated, then nodded, fear warring with determination. Okay. Good luck, Klynch. The kid slipped away down the ladder, disappearing into the gloom below. Klynch was alone on the catwalk again, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. He looked at his arm. The gold felt like a living thing, cold and alien, yet humming with barely contained power. He closed his flesh eye, focusing inward, trying to sense the energy, to connect with it not as a victim, but as a conduit. He remembered the artifact's flare when it transmuted scrap, the intense hum. He tried to replicate that feeling, to draw on the energy coiling within his transformed limb. He focused his intent on the unstable section of the cavern roof above Scoria's operation. Resonate, destabilize, fall. He raised his golden arm, pointing it towards the target. A low hum started, not from the artifact locked away cycles ago, but from him. The golden patterns on his arm glowed brighter, the light intensifying, pulsing rapidly. The cold deepened, becoming an agonizing burn that shot up his arm towards his shoulder. Pain lanced through him, blurring his vision. He felt like his very atoms were vibrating, threatening to shake apart. Below, Scoria's technicians were placing the final plasma charge on the vault door. One of them looked up, perhaps sensing the shift in energy, or maybe just seeing the impossible light emanating from the catwalk high above. He pointed, shouting something Klynch couldn't hear over the hum building within him. Guards started raising their weapons. Scoria turned, her eyes locking onto Klynch's position, her expression turning from predatory confidence to shock and fury. Klynch ignored them, pouring all his focus, all his will, into the energy building in his arm, directing it towards the ceiling. The hum became a piercing whine. The golden light flared, engulfing his entire arm, blindingly bright. He felt something give within him, a tearing sensation, followed by an unimaginable surge of cold energy lancing out from his hand towards the cavern roof. There was no visible beam, but the effect was instantaneous. The targeted section of the roof groaned, shuddered, and then collapsed inwards with a deafening roar. Tons of compacted junk, twisted metal, rock, ancient machinery plummeted downwards, directly onto Scoria's primary work area near the vault. Chaos erupted below. Alarms blared. Guards scattered as the debris cloud billowed outwards, choking the cavern with dust. Klynch heard screams, the shriek of tortured metal, the secondary explosions as the falling junk hit volatile equipment. He staggered back from the railing, collapsing onto the catwalk, his golden arm completely numb now, cold as death, the brilliant light slowly fading back to a dull gleam. The effort had drained him utterly. Black spots danced in his vision. He had done it. He had created the diversion. He forced himself to his feet, peering through the dust cloud below. The area around the vault door was buried. Scoria was visible near her command post, protected by a partial overhang, shouting orders, trying to restore control amidst the panic. Guards were converging on the collapse zone, others firing wildly up at the catwalk where the energy surge had originated. Pulse bolts ricocheted off the metal beams around Klynch. He had to move. Jex was counting on him. Patch was counting on him. He stumbled along the catwalk, heading for the service ladder Jex had taken, his mechanical claw helping him keep balance. His entire right side felt frozen, unresponsive. The golden stain had spread further during the energy discharge, now reaching his shoulder, creeping towards his neck. He could feel the cold stiffness invading his chest. Time was running out, faster than ever. He reached the ladder and began the clumsy descent, pulse bolts pinging off the metalwork nearby. He dropped the last few meters, landing heavily in the shadows at the cavern floor level. The dust was still thick, visibility poor. He could hear Jex's voice nearby, muffled but urgent, near the reinforced tent scoria used for Patch. Klynch moved towards the sound, sticking to the periphery, using the chaos as cover. He saw Jex struggling with the electronic lock on the tent flap. "Klynch, it's mag sealed," Jex hissed, frustration etched on their face. Klynch assessed the lock. Standard issue, probably keyed to Scoria's command codes. His thermal lance could cut it, but that would take time, make noise. He looked at his golden hand again. Could he? He placed the numb, metallic palm flat against the lock mechanism. He didn't try to channel energy this time, just focused on the artifact's inherent property: transmutation, change, corrupt, decay. The lock fizzed. Sparks flew. The metal around his hand shimmered, not turning gold but rapidly oxidizing, corroding, crumbling into dust. With a final asterisk clunk asterisk, the magnetic seal disengaged. Klynch pulled the tent flap open. Inside, Patch looked up, startled. She was tending to a wounded scavenger on a cot, but her movements seemed restricted, her expression grim. She wasn't just working here. She was clearly a prisoner. "Klynch, Jex, what in the—" Her eyes widened as she took in Klynch's golden arm, now fully exposed, reaching his shoulder. "By the stars, the conversion. It's so advanced." "No time, Patch," Klynch rasped, the cold stiffness making speech difficult. "We're getting you out. Scoria's operation is disrupted. Can you move?" Patch nodded, grabbing a small med kit. "Yes, let's go. This way there's a waste disposal chute behind the incinerator unit. Leads deeper into the underjunk, bypasses the main tunnel's scoria controls." As they helped the wounded scavenger, who seemed barely conscious, to his feet, the tent flap ripped open again. Vox stood there, Cable's unsettlingly calm enforcer, pulse rifle leveled. "Leaving so soon, Doctor," Vox's synthesized voice droned. Cable anticipated auxiliary escape routes, and Klynch, Cable requires your unique physiology, alive if possible. Klynch shoved Patch and Jex behind him. He faced Vox, his mechanical claw whirring, his golden arm held defensively across his chest. He was weakened, the energy discharge having taken a massive toll. His right side felt like solid ice. He wasn't sure he could fight. Vox's rifle barrel tracked Klynch. Do not resist. Cable's analysis suggests your condition is accelerating. Further energetic output will likely trigger catastrophic systemic conversion. Catastrophic systemic conversion, turning completely into gold. Vox wasn't just threatening him. He was stating a fact based on whatever data Cable had gleaned. Klynch glanced at Patch at Jex. He couldn't fight, maybe, but he could still choose asterisk how this ended. He thought of the artifact's core function, transmutation, not just scrap to gold, but maybe energy. He met Vox's blank optical sensors, a final, desperate gamble. He focused inward one last time, not on projecting energy outwards, but on the artifact's core nature change. He focused on the cold, alien power flooding his system, the power that was killing him, turning him into inert metal. He didn't try to control it. He let it surge, embracing the icy fire, and directed it towards the only thing he had left to manipulate, himself. Change asterisk, he thought, not towards gold, but towards pure, unstable energy. Release. The golden patterns on his arm, shoulder, and now creeping onto his neck exploded with incandescent light. The cold intensified beyond agony, becoming an absolute zero that shattered his consciousness. His last sensation was not of turning into solid gold, but of dissolving into blinding, unbearable light. Chapter 9: Shelter and Science. The world returned not as sight or sound, but as pain. A raw, burning agony centered in Klynch's right shoulder, radiating outwards, starkly contrasting the profound, deathly cold that still permeated his transformed limb. He gasped, consciousness flooding back in a disorienting wave. He was lying on something soft, a pallet. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and ozone, overlaid with the ever-present underjunk dampness. He tried to move, but his right side from shoulder to fingertip was completely inert, heavy as lead, colder than ice. He forced his left eye open. Dim light filtered from a single, jury-rigged glow rod hanging overhead. He was in a small, cramped space, maybe a side tunnel or a storage alcove, reinforced with scavenged metal sheets. Patch leaned over him, her face etched with worry and exhaustion. She held a scanner device, its readings flickering erratically as she passed it over his golden arm. Jex huddled nearby, watching anxiously, Bolt's core unit resting on the kid's lap, emitting soft, concerned-sounding clicks. "Klynch, can you hear me?" Patch's voice was low, urgent. "Patch," Klynch rasped, his throat dry, his voice hoarse. "What happened, Vox?" "Gone," Patch said grimly. "When you overloaded." The energy discharge was immense. Blinding light, intense heat right at the focal point. Vox was caught in the blast radius. Nothing left but scorched metal and fused circuits. It collapsed the tent, gave us the chance to drag you out through the disposal chute Jex found. Klynch processed this slowly. He survived. Somehow. He hadn't turned fully into gold, hadn't dissolved into pure energy. But the price? He looked down at his arm. The golden stain hadn't just reached his shoulder. It now covered the right side of his chest, creeping like metallic frost across his collarbone towards his neck. The patterns were deeper now, more complex. The golden sheen almost iridescent in the dim light. It looked less like metal fused to flesh. and more like his very being was being rewritten into something alien. "How bad is it?" he asked, dreading the answer. Patch deactivated the scanner with a sigh, running a hand through her lank hair. "It's unprecedented, the systemic conversion Vox mentioned. It's happening, Klynch, rapidly. When you channeled that energy, you accelerated the process exponentially. The architect matrix isn't just coding your cells anymore, it's replacing them, molecularly bonding. Your arm, your shoulder, part of your torso. Metabolically, they barely register as biological anymore." "So I'm dying." Patch hesitated. "Your asterisk changing, whether that equates to dying in this context. I do know. Your core temperature on the right side is near freezing. Metabolic activity is almost nil. Yet the energy readings coming off the converted tissue are astronomical and unstable." She tapped the scanner. "I've never seen anything like it. It's like your body is becoming a living battery, or maybe a capacitor, for an energy source I can't comprehend." Klynch tried to absorb this. Not dying, but changing, becoming. What? A living statue, a conduit for alien power. The thought was terrifying. He flexed the fingers of his left hand, clinging to the sensation of normal flesh and bone. "The scavenger you were treating?" Klynch asked, remembering the figure in the tent. "Didn't make it through the chute collapse," Patch said quietly. "Another casualty of Scoria's ambition." Jex spoke up, voice subdued. "We found this place, sealed it off best we could. Bolt says it's off the main tunnel network Scoria was mapping. Should be safe for a bit, but Scoria's still out there. She lost the vault access, but she won't give up." "She won't," Klynch agreed, his voice strained. The cold stiffness was making breathing uncomfortable. "She still wants the source. She'll tear this underjunk apart looking for it, or for me." He was the only known living link to the architect tech now, a walking, talking for now artifact. Patch began cleaning the burn area on his shoulder, where the energy discharge seemed to have originated. Her touch was gentle, professional, despite the bizarre circumstances. "I've administered painkillers and broad-spectrum antibiotics just in case, but Klynch, standard medicine has no effect on the converted tissue. It's like trying to medicate rock." "Is there anything you can do?" Klynch asked, the question heavy with unspoken fear. "To stop it, slow it down?" Patch looked at him directly, her eyes filled with a weary honesty. "Scientifically, based on everything I know, no, the process seems irreversible, driven by forces beyond our understanding. Trying to surgically remove the affected tissue would be impossible. There's no clear boundary anymore, it's integrated, and likely fatal." She paused. "But I've been analyzing the energy signatures Bolt recorded, cross-referencing them with fragmented data logs I salvaged over the years. There are fringe theories, legends about resonance nullification. Like Cable mentioned, frequencies, dampeners. Something like that. The architect technology seems to operate on specific resonant frequencies. If you could generate a counter-frequency, precisely calibrated, theoretically it might disrupt the conversion process, halt the cascade." Patch frowned, tapping the scanner again. "The problem is, the resonance coming off you is incredibly complex, multi-layered and shifting. Finding the exact counter-frequency would require immense processing power, precise instrumentation. Things we definitely don't have down here." So impossible, Klynch stated flatly. Maybe not asterisk impossible asterisk, Patch countered, a thoughtful look in her eyes. Architect tech interacts with energy. You channeled it yourself twice. What if the key isn't external? What if the control, the dampening frequency, needs to come from within the resonant field, from the source? The artifact. Klynch thought of the knotted object, likely still hidden back in his abandoned shelter cycles ago. Useless. Not necessarily the original artifact, Patch mused. You asterisk are the resonant field now, Klynch. Your converted tissue is the capacitor. Maybe there's a way to tune it, to consciously control the resonance, stabilize it, find the null frequency yourself. Klynch stared at her. Control it. He had unleashed its power twice, nearly killing himself both times. The idea of deliberately manipulating the alien energy transforming him felt like juggling plasma grenades. How? I barely survived letting it loose. I don't know, Patch admitted. Meditation, biofeedback, focusing your will. It sounds like metaphysics, not science, but we're far beyond textbook medicine here. She looked at his golden arm. The fact that you haven't undergone complete, catastrophic conversion already suggests some level of unconscious regulation might be happening. Your biological system's fighting back, perhaps. Or maybe the energy discharge fundamentally altered the matrix. Bolt's core unit emitted a series of rapid clicks. Jex translated Bolt, picking up distant vibrations. Regular patterns could be drilling or heavy footsteps, still far off but moving, generally this way. Scoria, her patrols were sweeping the underjunk. Their temporary shelter wouldn't remain hidden for long. Klynch struggled to sit up, ignoring the searing pain in his shoulder and the heavy, alien drag of his right side. We need to move again. Deeper. You can't travel like this, Klynch, Patch protested. You need rest, and I need time to analyze these readings, figure out. There is no time, Klynch snapped, then winced as the effort sent jolts of pain through his chest. Scoria finds us, we're all dead, or worse. She gets her hands on me, figures out how to control this. He gestured with his claw at his golden arm. She becomes unstoppable. He pushed himself fully upright, swaying slightly. The world tilted, his sense of balance thrown off by the dead weight on his right. Patch, keep thinking about that resonance control. Jex, help me up. Bolt, find us the deepest, most hidden hole you can sense. We run until we can't run anymore. Patch looked like she wanted to argue, but the grim determination in Klynch's eyes and the undeniable logic of the approaching threat silenced her. She gathered her scanner and med kit. Jex helped Klynch to his feet, the kid's thin frame surprisingly strong. Leaning heavily on Jex and using his claw for balance, Klynch took a shuffling step forward. The golden part of him felt like an anchor dragging him down, cold and utterly alien. Yet deep within it, he could feel the faint, residual hum of the power he had unleashed. It was a part of him now, this spreading, golden stain. A curse, a death sentence, and maybe, just maybe, the only weapon he had left. If he could learn to control it before it consumed him entirely. The race was on, against Scoria, against time, and against the terrifying transformation unfolding within his own body. Chapter 10. The Siege of the Shelter. Deeper, always deeper. Their flight through the underjunk became a desperate shuffle through collapsing tunnels and echoing, refuse-filled caverns. Bolt's core unit, carried carefully by Jex, guided them through the labyrinth, seeking paths less traveled, areas where the structural groans were less frequent, where the air tasted marginally less toxic. Klynch leaned heavily on Jex, each step an effort, the cold, dead weight of his golden right side a constant, agonizing burden. The transformation continued its relentless creep, tracing golden frost across his neck, chilling the side of his face. Talking was becoming harder, his jaw stiffening on the right side. Patch monitored his vitals with her scanner, her expression growing increasingly grim. The energy fluctuations within his converted tissue were becoming more erratic, the resonance patterns shifting wildly. "It's accelerating, Klynch," she murmured during one brief rest stop, huddled in the lee of a mountain of fused medical waste. "Whatever you did back there, it woke something up, or broke something. The stability is degrading." "Control." Klynch forced the word out, the muscles on the right side of his mouth barely responding. "Need to control it." "Focus," Patch urged, guiding his left hand to rest on the cold, golden expanse of his own chest. "Try to feel the energy. Don't fight it, Klynch. Try to harmonize with it. Find the quiet place within the storm." Klynch closed his good eye, trying to follow her instructions. He focused inward, past the pain, past the cold, reaching for the vibrating hum within his transformed flesh. It felt like touching raw chaos, a maelstrom of alien energy threatening to tear him apart. Harmonize. It felt like trying to soothe a supernova. He recoiled mentally, gasping, the effort sending fresh waves of agony through him. "Can't," he choked out. "Keep trying," Patch insisted gently. "Maybe small steps, just awareness, acceptance." Bolt's core suddenly emitted a sharp series of warning clicks. Jex tensed. Contacts, multiple, closing fast, both tunnel entrances to this cavern. Scoria's hunters, they'd found them, cornered again. Klynch pushed himself away from the wall, his mechanical claw gripping the ground for support. He scanned the cavern, a vast, echoing space dominated by the mountain of medical waste, illuminated by flickering emergency lights from a derelict overhead gantry. There was no obvious escape route, just the two tunnels Bolt had indicated were now compromised. "Defendable?" Klynch asked Patch, nodding towards their position behind the waste mountain. Patch shook her head. "Too much open ground if they flank us, and we have nothing to barricade with." Heavy footsteps echoed from one tunnel. Armed figures emerged, fanning out, pulse rifles raised. Scoria's scavengers. From the other tunnel more appeared. They were caught in a pincer movement. "Patch Jex," Klynch rasped, pushing them further behind the curve of the waste pile. "Stay back, keep down." He faced the advancing hunters, perhaps a dozen of them closing in from both sides. They moved cautiously, clearly under orders to take him alive if possible, but their weapons were ready. Their eyes were fixed on his glowing golden side, a mixture of fear and avarice in their expressions. He knew he couldn't fight them physically. His left side was weakening from the strain, his right side useless dead weight. He couldn't trigger another massive energy discharge without risking immediate catastrophic conversion, killing himself and maybe Jex and Patch too. He needed control, not overwhelming power but precision. He thought of the lock on Patch's tent, how he'd focused the artifact's transmutation property not into gold but into decay. Could he do that on a larger scale? Not project energy but project chain. He raised his golden hand, not in threat but as a focus. He ignored the hunters momentarily, closing his good eye again, reaching inward towards the chaotic energy. He didn't try to command the storm this time. He tried to find a single thread within it, a specific frequency. The frequency of decay. The resonance of rust, of entropy, of things falling apart. He remembered the crumbling lock, the ferrous blight consuming metal, the slow degradation of everything on Xylos. He focused that feeling, that specific resonance outwards, not as a blast but as a wave, a subtle vibration rippling through the cavern. Unmake, unravel, decay. For a moment nothing happened. The hunters continued their advance, spreading out to surround the waste pile. One of them laughed, a harsh, cruel sound. "Look at him, half statue already. Scoria wants him breathing, boys, but she didn't say how much." Then the change began. Subtle at first. A flicker in the overhead emergency lights as their wiring corroded. A groan from the metal gantry as rusted supports weakened. Patches of rust bloomed with unnatural speed on the barrels of the hunters' pulse rifles. The hunters paused, looking around in confusion. One tried to fire his rifle. It sputtered, sparks flying from the casing, then died. Another's weapon simply crumbled in his hands, turning to red dust. The metal plating on their crude armor began to flake away. Panic erupted. Shouts of fear replaced the earlier confidence. They looked down at their decaying gear, then up at Klynch, his golden arm outstretched, pulsing faintly not with light, but with a barely visible wave of distortion, like heat haze. "What sorcery is this?" one yelled, backing away. "It's the artifact. It's cursing us." Another screamed, dropping his disintegrating weapon and turning to flee. The effect wasn't instantaneous, but it was pervasive. Anything predominantly metallic within the radius of Klynch's focused decay resonance began to rapidly corrode, weaken, fall apart. The structural integrity of the cavern itself seemed compromised, dust sifting from the ceiling, chunks of debris beginning to fall. Klynch maintained his focus, the effort draining him, the cold in his body deepening. But there was no agony this time, just immense concentration. He felt like a tuning fork, vibrating at a specific, destructive frequency. Some hunters tried to push forward, relying on melee weapons, but even their vibroknives shorted out, their metal clubs grew pitted and brittle. Others simply broke and ran, scrambling back the way they came, desperate to escape the invisible corrosion. Suddenly, a high-powered plasma bolt screamed past Klynch's head, impacting the medical waste mountain behind him. It exploded outwards, showering the area with burning refuse. Klynch snapped his focus back to the tunnel entrance. Scoria stood there, flanked by two guards armed with heavy plasma rifles apparently unaffected by the decay field, perhaps made of non-metallic composites or shielded. Scoria herself held a sleek, advanced-looking sidearm, her face a mask of cold fury. "Impressive, Klynch," Scoria called out, her voice amplified, cutting through the cavern's growing chaos. "You've learned a new trick, but entropy consumes everything eventually, including you." She raised her sidearm. "Kill him, bring me the arm." The two guards opened fire with the plasma rifles, heavy bolts slamming into the ground near Klynch, forcing him back. He couldn't maintain the decay resonance while dodging plasma fire. The corrosive effect lessened, and the remaining loyal hunters, seeing their chance, surged forward again. Klynch scrambled backwards, his mechanical claw scrabbling for purchase. He was exposed, outmatched. Jex peeked around the waste pile, face pale. Patch was trying to shield them both from stray shots and falling debris. He was out of options. He couldn't fight them off. He couldn't maintain the decay field. Another energy blast would kill him. He looked at his golden arm. If he couldn't control the energy, couldn't control the decay, maybe he could control the asterisk form. He focused again, a last desperate act. Not on energy, not on decay, but on transmutation, the original function. He focused on the ground beneath the charging hunters, on the piles of junk, the loose debris. He pushed the transmutation resonance outwards, not willing gold, but something simpler, something faster. Change form, fuse, solidify. The ground beneath the charging hunters seemed to ripple. Loose scrap metal flowed like liquid, fusing together. Piles of debris solidified, hardening instantly into slag-like barriers. The hunters stumbled, finding their feet suddenly encased in rapidly hardening junk concrete. Walls of instantly fused scrap erupted from the floor, blocking their path, trapping them. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't gold. It was crude, instant, defensive transmutation. Wall after wall erupted as Klynch swept his focus across the cavern floor, penning Scoria's forces, blocking lines of sight, turning the open space into a chaotic maze of fused junk. The effort was immense. Klynch sagged, his vision blurring, the cold reaching the center of his chest. He could feel the golden conversion accelerating again, the brief control slipping away as raw power surged through him. Scoria, momentarily blocked by a newly formed wall, roared in frustration. She blasted through it with her sidearm, stepping forward, her eyes blazing. "You can't hold me back forever, Klynch. That power will consume you." Klynch met her gaze, swaying on his feet. He was weakening fast. He had bought moments, nothing more. Then a new sound echoed through the cavern, a deep, powerful, subterranean grinding. The entire cavern shuddered violently. Cracks snaked across the ceiling. The ground vibrated intensely. Bolt's core, held by Jex, emitted a frantic series of high-pitched shrieks. Jex yelled, translating over the roar. Bolt says, "Massive energy surge nearby, tectonic instability, the decay field, the transmutations. Klynch, you didn't just affect the junk, you destabilized the bedrock, the whole sector's coming down." The cavern groaned around them. Rocks rained from the ceiling. The floor buckled. Scoria looked up, her expression finally shifting from fury to alarm. Even her ambition couldn't fight planetary collapse. "Retreat!" Scoria yelled to her trapped and bewildered forces. "Back to the surface. Now!" She fired one last hateful glare at Klynch, then turned and disappeared back into the tunnel, her guards closed behind. Klynch barely registered her departure. The world was tilting, roaring, falling apart around him. Patch grabbed his left arm, Jex supporting his collapsing weight. "Klynch, we have to move," Patch shouted over the din. "There might be a stable access tunnel bolt detected earlier. This way." They half-dragged, half-carried him away from the center of the collapsing cavern, dodging falling debris, the floor shaking beneath them. Klynch's consciousness flickered. The cold was absolute now, reaching his core. The golden patterns were spreading across his face, blinding his left eye, sealing his jaw. He could no longer speak, no longer move his left side effectively. He was becoming gold. His last coherent thought, as darkness and the roar of collapsing xylos consumed him, was not of fear, but of a strange, cold clarity. He had failed to control the power. It had consumed him. But maybe, just maybe, in his final act, he had buried Scoria's prize and bought the others a chance to escape the gilded cage of the Junkyard Planet. Chapter 11. Into the Maw. Darkness, silence. Not the oppressive silence of the underjunk, but a profound internal stillness. Klynch floated in a void detached from the roaring collapse, the pain, the cold. He felt complete, solid, unchanging. The chaotic energy within him was gone, replaced by a perfect, terrible equilibrium. He had become the statue. Then sensation returned, sharp and unwelcome. Vibration, movement, a rhythmic jostling. He wasn't floating, he was being carried. Voices filtered through the golden shell encasing his hearing. Stable for now, but the whole sector's compromised. Patch's voice, strained, anxious. "This tunnel seems less affected, but where does it lead?" Bolt says, "Upwards," Jex's voice trembling but determined. "Towards older strata, less junk, more actual rock, maybe, surface." Surface. The word echoed strangely in Klynch's inert mind. He tried to open his eyes, but the gold had sealed them shut. He tried to speak, but his jaw was fused. He tried to move, but his body, from his right shoulder across his chest, neck, and face, down to his fingertips, was solid, immovable gold. Only his left side retained some semblance of its former self, weak and unresponsive, trapped against the unyielding metal. He was imprisoned within his own transformed body. He felt the motion change, becoming smoother. They were dragging him on some kind of improvised travois, likely rigged by Patch and Jex from salvaged materials. The vibrations lessened as they moved onto what felt like smoother ground, perhaps the bedrock Jex mentioned. How long had he been like this? Hours, cycles. The energy discharge, the defensive transmutation, the cavern collapse, it had triggered the final, catastrophic conversion Vox had warned about. He hadn't dissolved into light, hadn't exploded. He had simply solidified. Patch's voice again, closer now. "His biological signs are minimal, Jex. Left side autonomic functions only, barely registering. It's like he's in hibernation or just gone." "He's still in there," Jex insisted fiercely. "I know it. Bolt says there are still faint energy patterns within the gold, different from before. Stable, but weird." Energy patterns. Klynch focused inward past the suffocating solidity. He could sense it too. Not the raging chaos from before, but a deep, resonant hum, perfectly balanced, emanating from the golden mass that was now part of him. It felt calm, controlled. Was this the null frequency Patch theorized about, achieved not through conscious effort but through total conversion? Had he inadvertently found stability in becoming the thing he feared most? The journey continued. Klynch drifted in and out of awareness, the passage of time marked only by the changing echoes in the tunnels, the brief pauses for rest, the low murmur of Patch and Jex's voices. He heard snippets Bolt detecting faint atmospheric traces from above, Patch worrying about dwindling supplies, Jex trying to keep spirits up with stories Klynch couldn't quite follow. He was helpless, a burden, a golden anchor weighing them down, guilt warred with a strange sense of peace. He was no longer changing, no longer fighting the inevitable. He simply was asterisk. Then the environment changed dramatically. The air grew warmer, humid, carrying strange, organic smells Klynch hadn't encountered in the deep underjunk. The ground became soft, yielding. The sounds changed, dripping water, buzzing insects, the distant calls of unidentifiable creatures. "Where are we?" Jex asked, awe in their voice. "Bolt's readings are strange," Patch replied, sounding bewildered. "High humidity, complex organic compounds, methane pockets. It's like we've surfaced inside some kind of underground jungle." Klynch felt them lower the travois onto soft, mossy ground. He could sense lush vegetation pressing close, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and blooming, alien flowers. "Look," Jex breathed. Light filtered down from somewhere above, dappled and green. They were in a vast cavern, but unlike the junk-filled ones below, this was teeming with life. Bioluminescent fungi cast shifting patterns on colossal roots dangling from the ceiling. Strange, multi-limbed creatures skittered through oversized ferns. A sluggish river of iridescent slime flowed nearby. "This must be one of the deep biomes," Patch mused. "Formed in geothermal vents, maybe, evolving in isolation for millennia after the planet was designated a dump. Incredible. Incredible, but potentially just as dangerous as the junk heaps." Bolt's core emitted a series of clicks. "Bolt says atmospheric pressure is normalizing," Jex reported. "We might be near a surface vent system, but also detecting large biosignatures, very large and territorial." As if on cue, a deafening roar echoed through the jungle cavern, much deeper and more resonant than the glint maw's snarl. It sounded hungry. "We need shelter," Patch said urgently. "Something defensible." They struggled to move Klynch's dead weight through the thick undergrowth. The golden statue that was his right side snagged on vines and roots. He felt completely useless, a liability hindering their escape. They found refuge in a shallow cave behind a curtain of thick, rubbery leaves, overlooking the bizarre jungle. From their hiding place, they watched as a creature of nightmare proportions lumbered into view. It resembled a colossal, slug-like horror, easily 10 meters long, its body a mass of quivering, translucent flesh revealing pulsing organs within. Dozens of eye stalks waved blindly, and its vast, circular maw gaped open, lined with rows of grinding, chitinous plates. An ashworm, Klynch recognized from scavenger tailies, but larger and more grotesque than any description. It seemed to be consuming the very earth and slime as it moved, processing it through its horrific bulk. "Scrap," Jex whispered, eyes wide. The ash worm ignored their cave, its slow passage shaking the ground. But its presence confirmed the danger. This wasn't salvation. It was just a different kind of hell. Patch checked her scanner again, then looked at Klynch, lying immobile on the mossy ground. "Jex, help me get him comfortable. We need to rest, figure out our next move. And Klynch, if you're in there. That internal energy bolt's detecting. It's still stable, almost peaceful. Maybe this state, this equilibrium, maybe it's not the end." Klynch couldn't respond, couldn't offer reassurance. He could only lie there, trapped in his golden shell, listening to the sounds of the alien jungle, feeling the strange, calm hum within the metal that had once been his flesh. Was this peace, or just the quiet of the tomb? They spent what felt like a long cycle in the cave. Patch treated Jex's minor scrapes, rationed their last nutrient bar, and worked tirelessly on her scanner, analyzing the biome's hazards and Bolt's sensor readings of Klynch's golden state. Jex kept watch, occasionally whispering updates on the movements of strange creatures outside. Klynch focused inward, exploring the sensation of the stable energy field. It felt different now, less alien, more integrated. The boundary between Gold and his remaining flesh felt less like a battlefront and more like a quiet shore. He tried, tentatively, to influence the energy, not with force but with gentle will, like Patch had suggested. He focused on the simple act of wiggling a finger on his left hand. Nothing happened externally, but deep within the golden matrix he felt a flicker, a response. The energy field shifted, infinitesimally, echoing his intent. Hope, faint but persistent, sparked within his silent prison. Maybe Patch was right. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe it was a new, terrifying beginning. Bolt's core suddenly chirped urgently. Jex stiffened. "Bolt says, incoming, fast, not organic, metallic signatures, multiple." Patch scrambled to the cave entrance, peering out. Her face paled. Scoria, her surface teams. They must have tracked the tunnel collapse, followed the vent system upwards. Armed figures in Scoria's livery emerged from the bioluminescent jungle, sweeping the area with scanners, weapons ready. They were converging on the cave. "They found us," Jex cried, scrambling back. Patch looked from the approaching soldiers to Klynch's inert form. "We can't outrun them, not carrying him." Klynch felt a surge of despair. After everything, after surviving the conversion, they were caught. He focused inward again, desperately trying to replicate the flicker, to do something. The soldiers reached the cave entrance, rifles raised. The lead figure, helmeted and armored, stepped inside, scanner locking onto Klynch's golden form. "Subject located. Secure the area. The boss wants this one intact." Patch stood defiantly between the soldiers and Klynch, holding only her scanner like a weapon. Jex huddled beside her, holding Bolt's core. It was over. But then Klynch felt it. The energy inside him responding not just to his will, but to the proximity of Scoria's scanners, to the hostile intent. The calm hum intensified. The golden shell encasing him began to vibrate almost imperceptibly. The patterns on the surface shifted, flowing like liquid light. The lead soldier hesitated, lowering his scanner, his eyes wide behind his visor. What the? Klynch focused all his will, all his desperate hope into the burgeoning energy, not projecting it outwards, reconfiguring it inwards. Change form, adapt, respond. The golden shell around his face seemed to retract or perhaps flow, reconfiguring itself. With a soft asterisk click, his left eye was suddenly unobscured. He could see. Patch and Jex staring in shock, the bewildered soldiers. Then, with another internal shift, the gold sealing his lips flowed away, reforming, integrating. He drew a breath, his first conscious breath since the transformation. It shuddered through his half-frozen lungs. He opened his mouth and spoke. His voice was distorted, resonant, layered with the hum of the energy within him, but it was his voice. "Get," he commanded, the single word echoing with unnatural power, "away from them." The soldiers stumbled back, terrified by the impossible sight and sound. The golden statue was alive, and it was awake. Chapter 12: Golden Reckoning. The cavern fell silent, save for the drip of water and the buzz of unseen insects. Scoria's soldiers stared, frozen between disbelief and terror, their weapons momentarily forgotten. Patch and Jex looked at Klynch with wide, shocked eyes. He had spoken. The golden statue had spoken. Klynch pushed himself up slightly with his functional left arm, the movement stiff, agonizing. His right side remained utterly inert, cold gold, but the fact that he could move at all felt like a miracle. The energy humming within the golden matrix felt responsive. Volatile, yes, but tethered to his will in a way it hadn't been before. The total conversion, the subsequent equilibrium, it had forged a new, terrifying symbiosis. "I said," Klynch repeated, his voice resonating with the golden hum, each word an effort against the stiffness invading his chest. "Get away." The lead soldier finally snapped out of his shock, raising his rifle again, albeit with trembling hands. It's an abomination. Scoria's orders stand. Take him." The soldiers hesitated, clearly unnerved, but loyalty or fear of Scoria won out. They advanced cautiously, weapons leveled. Klynch knew he couldn't fight them all conventionally. He focused inward, tapping into the energy field. He didn't want decay, didn't want uncontrolled transmutation. He needed something precise. He remembered the artifact's first manifestation, the sharp tendril extending. He focused that intent: defend, incapacitate. The golden surface of his right arm shimmered. Thin, flexible tendrils of solid gold extruded from his knuckles, impossibly fast, whipping through the air like metallic serpents. They didn't aim to kill, but wrapped around the soldiers' rifles, binding them instantly in unbreakable coils. Other tendrils shot out, ensnaring ankles, wrists, tripping them, immobilizing them without crushing them. Within seconds, the entire squad was disarmed and entangled, struggling futilely against the living gold. They cried out in fear and surprise, helpless. Klynch slumped back, the effort draining him, the cold deepening momentarily. Control required immense concentration, immense energy. He wasn't sure how long he could maintain it. "Klynch, how? Patch breathed, stepping forward, her scanner active again, readings flashing wildly. Equilibrium, Klynch rasped. Found. Balance within the change. He looked towards the cave entrance. More will come, Scoria. As if summoned by his word, Scoria's voice echoed from outside, amplified and imperious. Report. What's the delay? Have you secured the asset? Footsteps approached. Scoria appeared at the cave mouth, flanked by two heavily armed guards wearing the same composite armor as the previous ones, their plasma rifles unaffected by Klynch's earlier decay field. She took in the scene, her soldiers bound in gold, Klynch animate and aware, Patch and Jex standing defiantly. Her eyes narrowed, fixing on Klynch with predatory intensity. So, Scoria said, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across her face. The statue wakes. Cable's data suggested. Integration was possible, fascinating. She gestured with her advanced sidearm. Release my men, Klynch, and surrender the artifact which I now see is *U. Cooperate, and perhaps your companions survive. Perhaps Patch can even study your unique condition. Klynch met her gaze, the resonant hum within him pulsing steadily. No more deals, Scoria. No more sacrifices. Scoria laughed, a harsh, grating sound. Still defiant, look at yourself. You're a monster, a gilded freak. That power is consuming you whether you control it or not. Give it to me. I have the resources, the will to truly harness it, to bring order to this scrap heap. Your order, Klynch countered, his voice gaining strength. Tyranny, slavery, using architect power you don't understand will doom us all. Look what it did to me. He gestured weakly with his left hand towards his golden side. A necessary price. Progress demands sacrifice. Scoria snapped, her ambition blazing in her eyes. Enough talk. Guards, eliminate the witnesses. Subdue Klynch non-lethally if possible, but bring me that golden carcass regardless. The two guards raised their plasma rifles. Patch pulled Jex behind her. Klynch tensed, focusing his will again. He couldn't generate another Wideria effect. The risk of losing control, of triggering the final collapse, was too great. He needed precision. As the guards fired, Klynch reacted. Golden tendrils erupted from his arm again, not to bind, but to deflect asterisk. They formed a shimmering, interwoven shield in front of Patch and Jex, plasma bolts splashing harmlessly against the rapidly regenerating gold. Simultaneously, other tendrils shot towards the guards, aiming for the composite rifles. One guard dodged, but the other wasn't fast enough. A golden tendril wrapped around his plasma rifle, and Klynch focused his intent. Transmute, destabilize. The composite material of the weapon didn't turn to gold, but seemed to unspool, its molecular structure failing. It clattered to the ground, useless. The remaining guard continued firing, forcing Klynch to maintain the shield. Scoria watched, her smile gone, replaced by frustration, and a dawning realization that Klynch, even in this state, was more formidable than she'd anticipated. She raised her own sidearm, clearly architect tech, salvaged perhaps from the asterisk Ophidian drift before the collapse, or acquired through cable. It hummed with dangerous energy. Fine, she snarled. If you won't be controlled, you'll be unmade. She fired. Not plasma, but a beam of coherent, disruptive energy aimed directly at Klynch's golden chest. Klynch felt the impact like a physical blow, even through the inert gold. The energy beam wasn't trying to melt or blast. It was trying to undo the architect matrix, to destabilize the resonance he fought so hard to maintain. The calm equilibrium shattered. Chaos surged within him, the cold agony returning, threatening to overwhelm his control. The golden tendrils flickered, the shield wavering. He had to stop the beam. He couldn't shield against it. It was attacking the very nature of his transformed state. He dropped the shield, ignoring the remaining guard's plasma fire, which Patch and Jex scrambled to avoid, and focused everything on Scoria's weapon. He launched a single, thick tendril of gold directly at the sidearm. Scoria tried to dodge, but the tendril was too fast. It slammed into the weapon, not binding it, but delivering a targeted pulse of raw, chaotic energy drawn from the heart of his own internal storm. Overload. Scoria's architect weapon flared violently. Sparks showered from its casing. It emitted a deafening screech of protesting energy, then exploded in her hand. Scoria screamed, staggering back, clutching her mangled hand, her face contorted in pain and fury. The remaining guard, seeing his leader injured, hesitated. This was Klynch's chance, but the effort, the direct energy channeling combined with the hit from Scoria's weapon had pushed him too far. The chaotic energy surged, overwhelming his control. The golden conversion reignited, spreading rapidly across his remaining flesh, the cold becoming absolute. He felt his consciousness dimming, his control slipping away completely. He was solidifying again, perhaps for the last time. Through his fading vision, he saw Scoria, enraged, ignoring her injured hand, lunging towards him. Not to attack, but to touch him, to grab his golden arm, perhaps believing she could absorb the power, control the artifact through direct contact now that he was losing consciousness. Her uninjured hand reached out, fingers straining towards the pulsing gold of his shoulder. In that final moment, Klynch's last conscious act wasn't one of control but of release. He let go of the reins, letting the chaotic, transmuting energy flood outwards, not as a weapon, but as an uncontrolled wave, enveloping himself and the person touching him. Change, whispered the last flicker of his mind. Change us both. Scoria's fingers made contact with the pulsing gold just as the wave hit. There was no explosion, no flash of light, just a sudden, intense flare of golden energy engulfing them both, and then silence. When Patch and Jex dared to look, the cave was still. The remaining guard had fled. The bound soldiers were unconscious or catatonic, and where Klynch and Scoria had stood, there was now only one figure. It was a statue, roughly human-shaped but indistinct, features blurred. It was composed of two intertwined halves, one side the intricate patterned gold that had been Klynch, the other a smoother, more baroque gold Klynch recognized from Scoria's armor accents, now consuming her form. They were fused together, locked in a final, silent embrace of shared transformation. The golden hum was gone. The energy was quiet. The statue was completely inert, cold, and lifeless. A monument to ambition and its terrible price. Patch slowly approached, scanner held out. She scanned the fused statue. No energy readings, no life signs, biological or otherwise. It's finished. Jex stared, tears silently tracing paths through the grime on their face. Bolt's core emitted a series of soft, mournful clicks. They stood there for a long moment in the quiet, alien jungle cavern, the only sound the dripping water and the distant calls of strange creatures. Klynch was gone. Scoria was gone. The artifact's power, it seemed, was finally contained, locked away within the silent, fused statue. Patch finally turned to Jex. "We need to go. Get Bolt's chassis, get moving, find a way to the surface, survive." Jex nodded, wiping their eyes. They looked back one last time at the golden statue, a silent testament to the horrors and wonders of the Junkyard Planet. Then, together, they turned and disappeared back into the bioluminescent shadows, leaving the fused figures of Klynch and Scoria behind, a golden reckoning in the heart of the forgotten world. The end.